take the job. But he asked me if I was going to apply for the job. I'm like, the only time I wanted the job was when my son was in high school, and Oliver retired the year after he graduated. So I'm like, I'm not interested in being a head coach. I said, I'm already a head coach in one sport. I don't want to be a head coach in. I'm working on getting out of that one. And as much as we love our boss, I'm the paperwork head coach in wrestling.
Yeah. Dude, you're the unsung hero for wrestling.
Well,
because I tell the kids all the time.
No way. People always say, well, you do so much for them. Dude, well, we know we work for one of the greatest men ever born. But Ford, when I first he suckered me into becoming head coach in track because he didn't want it.
Yeah.
When John Alakis got out, what is this, 2008? 2008. And Ford comes up to me the day John Alakis tells me. Ford comes like over 2 seconds later, goes, slaps me on the back, said, "Man, I just went over to Coach Oliver. You'd be an amazing head coach." I'm all puffed up. I'm like, okay. About 2 months later, I realized he suckered me into all the paperwork that
all
goes
the administration,
into all that, and the two worst sports are not football but wrestling and track. And I said, "Man, you suckered me." He goes, "I knew you'd be good though."
Why is that? Is it because it's like
track,
many individual events?
For every event, every track meet you go to, you have to enter kids in, and usually it's on computer, and every kid's allowed 4 events, and then you got to make sure they don't go over their events, they don't go over their allotted meets. Same in wrestling, they put
weight classes. You can't have more than 55 matches before state,
and then
or 50.
Then all the other paperwork you do with coaching in general. At least I don't have to deal with inventory. Devon takes care of that, but the reason I have no problem doing it because he's the unsung hero. When Cheyenne and those guys were there, I was being lauded as, I won 2 years in a row state track coach of the year.
Holla.
And I'll get back to that. And because we work for the most unassuming man in wrestling, Coach Devon Ford, I'll say it since I didn't say his name earlier while the cameras were rolling, is he basically helped shape me as a head coach. Just gently nudging. Now, he didn't want to do any of the paperwork, but when I got the first time I got the award, when they handed it to me, he presented it to me, Keith Harder from Ladue, great guy, one of my mentor coaches. He comes over, they call me out on the floor, and they have Devon, and he give it to me. And I looked down at it because I didn't know what it was. Kind of like we set you up.
Yeah, you got me really good.
When we set you up, I looked down at it and I see what it is, and I just looked at Devon and I said, "They spelled your name wrong," because
I love your guys' relationship.
He is like a big brother to me. When my mom passed, he was on his way home from North Carolina. And I had talked to, remember Miss Meyer, the health teacher? She said, well, I told Devon, He drove all the way home. And at 2:00 in the morning, my wife and I are up talking. She goes, "There's a black man out on our porch." I said, I said, "It's Devon." I just opened the door and said, "Devon." We stayed up and talked till like 4:00 in the morning.
Wow, he came over at 2 a.m.
Just
still.
If I was in a war, a fight, stranded somewhere, he would not even hesitate.
Yeah, you guys, the thing I love about your relationship is that ride or die mentality, and that you guys always seem to be in sync. And like, it's not that you guys don't disagree on things or like that, but it's kind of this lost art to be two individuals that work so well together and then are never disrespectful, even in contradictions or necessarily if you don't see eye to eye with something. A lot of times in work, like I have people that I work very well with and I respect and admire, but it seems like that respect kind of has like a limit. Like we respect each other until a certain point, and then once that threshold is crossed, then the fucks and what are you doing and all this other stuff's going. I don't think I've ever seen you guys ever even like get like rowdy with one another.
No, we usually make fun of each other all the time, but that's about, because we're the same, we know what the focus is, it's not us.
Yeah.
And when the focus isn't you, that doesn't happen.
It was a very good point that you made. I think it was my first year of wrestling, and you were just like, or first year of coaching wrestling, forgive me. And you were just like, hey, we're just here for the kids.
Yeah.
Like, that's all we're here for. Without the kids, like, we're not here. And I was
Well,
like, yeah, you're right.
And when going back to Barb,
Yeah.
when that idiot coach from Live for
Yeah.
Life started all that stuff, and the way I calmed you down was, it's not about us.
Yeah. Well, that's why I got so fired up. Let me give a little context. We had a
Oh
wrestling.
no, I think you were. When I heard what she said, you had every right to be fired up.
This was girls' districts. And
I just didn't want to get Isaac DQ'd.
Yeah. We had a transgender athlete wrestling at the girls' district tournament for the championship. Now, it's very keen to point out some of the specifics of this. It is not like as if this athlete was, taking testosterone and getting on some sort of regimen or anything like that. It was simply a
Life choice.
a biological woman who is like saying, hey, this is how I feel. This is how I want to be called. This is the life I want to live. So I was like, cool. You know what I mean? If you're not altering your body in any which way, if you're not giving yourself some sort of competitive advantage, then I'm all for it. You know what I mean? Like, that's fine with me. And then the nice thing too was the fact that I was her coach. So like, I could kind of like oversee that. Like if I ever got the sniff of cheating, if I ever got the sniff of like maybe she started doing some
Tea
like,
or something,
yeah,
yeah.
some HRT or whatever, you know what I mean? Then I would have said something. And we even had a discussion when she was leaving her junior year. She's like, I think I'm gonna get on testosterone. I told her, I was like, that's fine if you get on testosterone. Like, I won't say anything, but then I'm gonna have you wrestling the boys next year. I was like, you can't get on testosterone and be wrestling the girls. So that's just
Well, the
unfair.
irony was Isaac wanted to wrestle the
Yeah,
boys.
that's the irony. But just wanted to take a second to pause the action and just tell you guys thank you so much for consuming our content. Easy Talk is a passion project. This podcast is just a bunch of like-minded people coming together to produce some cool stuff and talk to some cool people. One of the things I would very much appreciate is if you could possibly like the video or subscribe to the channel, just because it helps us in the algorithm and ultimately to grow, to get more exposure to everybody, including ourselves, and ultimately just make a better product. Take a second, I'd greatly appreciate it, and on with the show. I mean, anyway, Isaac beats the girl, and then the opposing coach, and I've never
And it was a great
had
match.
this.
That's the sad thing. It was
back
a
and forth.
beautiful match.
Yeah, and Isaac just got the takedown with like 2 seconds left and got the win. The coach like mouths over to me. I was like, we're ecstatic or whatever. The coach mouths over to me, fuck you. But doesn't say it, just set like mouths it. The reason I lost my mind is 2 reasons. 1, I would never do that to another coach. 1, okay? And then 2,
Gus Ford just smacked the crap.
2, it goes back to what you were saying about like it's for the kids. It's like, why are you getting so upset?
Right.
Like, you didn't lose. Go console your kid because your kid just lost. Like that sucks for them. They got second place at districts instead of the champion. You know what I mean? It was so. And also, I just thought to myself, these are high schoolers. This isn't college. This isn't like Olympic trials. This isn't like some world championship. Like, what are we talking about here?
Right.
Get over yourself, lady.
Yeah.
By the way, I don't think she was the coach the next year.
No, they fired her.
Yeah, good. I don't want to say the name of the school, but thanks, guys.
Because
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Barb wrote them a letter. Because, and the way Barb, to your previous guest, Barb was unbelievable the way she
man.
handled it. She, class act. Just unbelievable. No, but getting back to your original point, we're lucky because we work for one of the most selfless individuals I have ever met in my entire life.
Can I ask you a question? I read an article, and I don't know if this is 100% true or not, but I don't know if you would know. I never want to bring up Esmond to Devon. I just really kind of don't. You know what I mean?
I only bring him up in sports context.
Yeah. I read an article that said they found the guy who shot him, and that Devon basically like
Went down and testified for him.
was basically saying along the lines of like,
I'm not
don't send this kid to prison.
Yeah, I don't know if it was death penalty because I know Georgia's a death penalty state. I don't know if death penalty was on the thing, but he went down and testified. Well, he told me this. He told me himself that he was going to go down and testify. And he said, well, the kid, he manic, bipolar. He said he was off his meds. And he said he does, not so many words, but said, I'm not going to take away another parent's child from them. He said, this kid can get better. And I'm like, well, not your father. You know exactly how.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean,
I told Bruna.
if somebody hurt one of my kids, I'd be in prison for murder.
I told Bruna, and Bruna's like, that's the best man I know.
Yeah.
That's what she said immediately. She's like, he said that about the gentleman that took his son's life. I go, yeah. And Bruno's like, that's the best guy I know. You're absolutely right. For me, I can tell you right now, I would be an eye for an eye, and that's why I'd walk around blind. But
Well, and Tony, Nino's dad was there when we had to tell
yeah,
him.
you told me about
Oh,
that.
that one of the worst days ever, because we were just talking about you'd never seen Devon and I fight. I've only seen Devon upset 3 times, and I've known him for 35 years. He was an assistant for my dad in 1990. So, yeah, 35 years. I've only really seen him upset. And, well, one was when DJ's junior year.
Yeah, when we're talking about a lot. We're talking a lot of inside baseball, and this is gonna be very hard for some
Yes,
people to follow.
to give context,
Forgive us. Let me kind of illuminate some of this story. So we're talking about a gentleman by the name of Devon Ford, who for the longest time was like the head everything coach at Afton. He was my head wrestling coach when I was in Afton from '08 to 2011. And he's honestly the only, like, he was the reason why I came back to coach wrestling, was because he's like, hey, we could use some help. Like, we're talking about his life right now, how he's been such a pivotal role in what I would call like the Afton ecosystem, not even necessarily just like education, but like everything. Because like if you talk to anybody that has gone, Jesse Finney graduated like years and years ago, and he had Coach Ford as like his coach. So it's just kind of like
that was Coach Ford's first year as head football coach.
yeah. So I think to myself like, damn, like
I coached Jesse. That's how old I am.
So we were talking about specifically Devon. Coach Ford had his son was killed, murdered, and we're just basically talking about the reaction of this man and how he kind of handled these situations, which I think with a lot of grace, a lot of like divinity almost, like to be able to think the way he thinks is like truly admirable, because I don't think I have it within me.
I know Coach Ford doesn't go to church much. I don't think he's a deeply religious person, but I mean, as somebody who goes to church every Sunday and tries to, I fall so short of what he does naturally. I mean, he's one of the most amazing individuals I've met.
Yeah, he was like a father figure to me for the longest time. I got to be honest with you. When I was in high school,
And he will be if you want him to be or not.
yeah. Well, no, he was just by like, I don't even know if he knows this, but like he just like, he was so pivotal for me. He was the exact person I needed at the exact right time. There were some things going on in my family at the time, at that age, where me and my father were kind of like butting heads a lot. Didn't have the best relationship. I didn't really have the most respect for him. So like, having like another person fill that like male role model role for me was like really good. And I mean, I've adopted a lot of the things that the way he kind of tackles certain situations in my life. Now, granted, he's a much better man than I, so like I cannot say that like I mimic everything, but I think imitation is the greatest form of flattery. And I try to imitate a lot of the things that he does, along with other role models that I've kind of adopted throughout my life. But yeah, I mean, I think Ford was probably like the first father figure that I had that wasn't my father, if that makes sense. And deeply respect and admire that man to this day. Like I said, he's one of the few people on this planet that can still make me feel like a child. Like when he puts his hand on me and he's like, "What are you doing?" and all this, I'm like,
that's why I was trying to save you from getting snatched up against that Isaac's match.
Dude, I can't explain this, Tim. Like I'm at this point in my life where I'm like the ultra douche. Like I think I'm like, you know what I mean? I'm winning at this and all this other stuff. And then Devon will put his hand on my shoulder and be like, you messed up. And I'm like, I'm like 13-year-old Arion again. Like, sorry, coach. And I'm just like, what the fuck is this? How is this a thing?
But I'll tell you what, I mean, well, now you know what his nickname is in his family.
No.
Buddy.
Okay, he's everyone's buddy.
They call Uncle Buddy. If you ever hear Dr. Smith's children, they call him Uncle Buddy. Because when he grew up, he didn't know a stranger. Befriended everybody.
Especially their moms.
But in coaching, he loves everybody.
Yeah.
If you ever seen the Rocky movies, you like at the end of one of the ones, he says, well, they love you, Dad. He said, well, I love everybody. He literally, you have to work pretty hard for him not to like you. But then you add on the discipline layer. He's going to push you, and he's going to push you. And he's very good at knowing, do I need to rah-rah this kid or do I need to just kind of gently? But he'll get the most out of almost every kid. And who, when they come up to Afton, is not excited to see Devon Ford?
Everybody knows him.
I mean, and I'm gonna
Even the non-athletes.
I'm gonna brag on my father because he took over right as my father left, and my father was that person. He was the one. And Coach Ford has been usually assistant more than he's been a head coach. Like he stepped down when I first started coaching. He knew that his assistant really wanted to be Tony Griffith, the guy that from Veritas Academy, really wanted to be a head coach. So he stepped down, got out. Now he was always there, never paid, and was always around the program, and just always there. And will do anything, and there's no pride involved because he's going to do what is necessary.
Yeah.
Whatever's needed for success of that kid is what's going to happen.
I told Ryan this, but I'll tell you the same thing. Is like, I always had an appreciation for the coaches when I was like the athlete, but boy, do I have an appreciation for them now, like as a coach.
Yeah.
Especially considering like, I never thought about it this way, but like, for me, I always felt like, oh man, tournaments are all day Saturday and practices and all this other stuff. That what's I'm being held to this standard of like having to show up and all this other stuff. Yeah, so are the coaches. You know what I mean? The coaches are there every Saturday with you. The coaches are there. And by the way, they're not competing. You are. Like you get all the glory, you get all the things.
We're just
trying to help. Yeah, we're just trying to help you along the way. You know what I mean? And it was one of those things where my wife, I don't know if she'll be upset with me saying this, but like when wrestling season comes around, I'll be the first person to tell you, I think it is like a strain in our relationship. You know what I mean? Because I'm missing time with my wife.
Coaching wife is a real thing.
Yes. But then she'll see like how I talk about the kids. Like I'll come home from like a Saturday tournament. I'm like, oh my God, this kid did this or this kid did that. Or I'll come home from like a practice and be like, you should have seen this kid. You know what I mean? And then she'll tell me, she's like, if this was like something else, like if you were not at home for business or something, I would say something. She's like, I can tell that you're really passionate about this. You enjoy this.
And it's
that's what I'm trying to get to. It has to be a passion because it's not for the money.
No,
the amount of hours. Let's say you got paid $5,000 or $10,000 a season. If you were to divide that by the amount of hours you're spending,
much more generous than the district is.
It's like sorry, 20,000 after only the finest. It's still like less than minimum wage. You know what I mean? It's like you're basically
Devon
doing this
and I
'cause you want to.
calculated out. My wife did it. We I think on a good season, football we make the most. He's the head coach in wrestling. I'm the head coach in track, and we're each other's top paid assistant. And we don't make as much in either one of those, which we spend way more time in than we do in football. Then we get paid as assistants in football.
Yeah, that's the other thing is like I told them because they'll be like, oh, thanks, coach, thanks. I was like, you guys need to thank Tim. I was like, Tim's going to the seating meeting. Tim's submitting all the paperwork. Tim's doing all the track stuff. I tell you guys all the time. I'm like, I got the best job. I get to come in, I get to coach wrestling, and I get to bounce.
But you have saved my body because I used to do a lot of the stuff that you do, and even when I was in good shape, our other volunteer coach, Stolarski, when I was just out of college and I just played college football, I had wrestled in college. He was a bull as a senior. He's a 189-pounder, and it was everything I could do to keep up with the kid. I'm like, now I had some years off where I hadn't done anything, but it's amazing how quick it goes away.
It's not even that. It's, you know what it is too? It's like they want to.
They want to beat you.
Here's a little secret. I don't think I've ever said this to you. I can't have a bad day as a coach.
No.
Like, because I'll never hear the end of it. One takedown, one this, one that. Ooh, coach, I got you, and all this other stuff. However, simultaneously, it's like this bittersweet thing. It's like, I do want them to get to the point where they're beating me. Because if they beat me, you're going to smash it at state. You know what I mean? So it's this weird feeling of like, I feel like I have to be on. When we do live wrestling, and it's like, this guy wants me, and then this guy wants me, and this guy wants me. I'm like, shit, like I am out of shape, and by the third guy, I'm surviving.
Well, and I'm lucky because I grew up in a coaching household. My father coached year-round. I was a pain-in-the-butt kid, so my mom, when she couldn't deal with me, would send me with my dad, and I'd just hang out at sporting events. I grew up at wrestling tournaments and playing up below the bleachers during my dad's football games. I mean, but so I've always had an idea of what, and I don't know if you remember him, but remember the Nino, the old official that used to be worked the PHL tournament, old white guy, big tall white guy, Thompson.
I think I do know.
He's always been running the wrestling in the PHL. And when I was a kid, we went down to Beaumont. My coach Mickey Stewart, God love him, had been teaching a city, so they had just started up as a club program. So he would take us down there on a weekday practice, and we'd get matches which we weren't counting because you were only allowed like
Back then, it was
28
what, 20?
matches
Yeah.
before we were wrestling. I went down there. One day he just divided us up. I was wrestling 145 my junior year. So okay, 145 on down. You guys are going to go to Beaumont. The rest were going to Roosevelt. Well, everybody they had was over 145 pounds. So I wrestled like 7 guys that day. They had me wrestling heavyweights and stuff like that. Well, I did learn things, and this is back to your story of, not wanting to lose. I'm wrestling all these guys, and I mean, I was a pretty good wrestler. I mean, these guys were just big, strong guys, so I just would wait and let them get tired. And well, they had this little roly-poly kid, and I'm walking out there, and Thompson, he's the coach and official. He's like, "Hey, you're gonna help me on this one." I'm like, what? You're gonna help me on this? So I see this kid. I mean, just looked like a bag of donuts. I mean, little chunky kid. And I'm like, all right. So,
Meaning give him a match. Like,
and I mean, I let him put me on my back like 2 or 3 times. And I'm like, and then I looked up at him. He goes, all right. I'm like, better be glad this isn't going on my record.
I think wrestling is one of the best sports for that. For that morality / it was the sport that gave me the most in terms of skill set that I extended to the rest of my life. And it wasn't anything physical. It was all mental.
Oh, I coach 2 individual sports and to me, the best team sports in football. And I can tell you, as far as working in a group, what I learned in football, from what I hear from people who have been to war, football is the best simulation for war. And those bonds, the ability to do teamwork, you can't learn. I mean, football, there's nothing better than football. I've played in a lot of team sports. But as far as my life is concerned, I learned more from wrestling about life than anything else because, and the thing you see as a coach, like Bow when he won his first match. I mean, you thought each of us had a firstborn child. We were so excited.
Talk about a kid who's changed.
Oh yeah,
so much.
So much confidence.
He's such a little shit right now, and I mean that with like
cocky a little bit.
Dude, he's a little like, but I mean that with like joy. Like, good. But he hits me up on Instagram and talks shit to me.
I know.
He'll be like, "Coach, I'm going to be in you." I'm like, "Brother."
When he wouldn't make eye contact with us.
Yes. He still won't. He'll talk shit on Instagram.
But I mean, is this free, coach?
That's the other thing I was going to bring.
But wrestling gives you, I mean, because when you accomplish something, you did it. Nobody else did it. Nobody was there pulling the strings. Nobody ran the touchdown that won the game. You did everything. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, and I think it's why it's hard to get numbers in our sports because a lot of this generation can't handle losing. Because when you lose, you got nobody on the same end. You have nobody else to blame.
Can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
What we had this year, we had 40 kids, 50 kids.
Oh, it was amazing.
Tim, when I was in high school, we had a team of 10.
Oh yeah,
12. We had everybody in that small. We have a small wrestling room at Afton, and then this year was the year where we had so many kids that it was actually like safety hazard. Yeah, it was a safety hazard to have that many kids in such a small room. And then we were talking about separating the kids, and thank God for Brian Bain, the athletic director.
Oh.
He basically gave us the cafeteria to use. So every day we would lay out the mats.
Had to fight the maintenance director because he was not thrilled.
Oh, I'm sure he was. Well, glad he lost.
Yeah.
But we would mop the mats and everything, wrestle, and then put them all the way up again. And at first I was like, oh man, this might be kind of a little cumbersome and everything. But then once you told the kids, hey, we're going to have to lay these out, but then we're going to have the cafeteria to wrestle, the kids are they just gravitate towards it and they're so grateful. But I guess what I'm trying to say is if you would have told me when I was in high school, hey, this year we're gonna have 40 kids come out for wrestling, I would have been like, no fucking way.
The numbers we had,
20 at the start, and we'd have like 8 by the end of the season every year.
the numbers we had this year, I don't think have been matched. You'd have to go back to my junior or senior year because we
Of
literally
high school, your junior or senior year.
We're talking 80s.
Yeah.
We were able to fill out either my junior or senior year, I can't remember. We were able to fill out a varsity, a JV, and a freshman lineup. And I mean, but Afton, I mean, we were just under 900 kids. I mean, it was a different school too. I mean, Afton was coming down out of that was the constant. I mean, from the 70s, about 78 to when I was in high school, they kept shrinking every year. Like they went from 1,500 just down to like the year class ahead of me, class of 86, was the first one not to go to the school across the street, the freshman center.
Gotcha.
So
all I know is I remember the first year when I got there, second year a little bit like every year we've been doing better. Every year we've been doing better with like the wrestling. Every year we've had more wrestlers, and like this last year was like better than the other years, and I'm hoping to God that this year is going to be even better. We do these summer practices now. We had like 16, 18 kids on first day for summer classes. I'm like, I'm not going to lie to you. Like there's like in me, I'm like, fuck yeah. Like this is exactly what I want. Like if I'm going to give up the time, I'm hoping that we get people coming in, and boy, do we. And I'm
well, I'm going to break your heart.
Why? You can't do it anymore?
No. When I first took over as head track coach, thought, first of all, I may have had I knew, first of all, the year we were second in state. You know how many points of our winning total at state I was accountable for? A half of it. My pole vaulter took a half a point. Little Kara Clapton split a 8th place medal. But Ford basically, all the Cheyenne, Haley, all those legendary kids, that was all him. And Shu was my jumps coach. But we got those girls. I mean, from the first 3 years I was there, Rachel Ederle, her senior year, we had I was responsible for that one. But we were a powerhouse for 3 years. And I looked at Ford, I said, man, now we got the girls going, now we got to just turn these boys around. And he goes, yeah, that's not the way it works around here. He said,
so?
He said, you'll come up with one and the other one will go down. And then when you start to bring them up, he said, you don't have enough kids in Afton. He said, it's not anything, it's not your coaching. He said, don't take it hard. He said, it's not your coaching. He said, because you only can coach the kids that come out.
Yeah.
He said, but you're not going to, he said, what if all these kids think, well, Afton is central to all these kids thinking they're going to end up in the NBA when we got these little 5'5" guys that should be wrestling.
Hey, relax.
I mean, you've seen it. I mean, how many of those kids on the basketball court would have been good little wrestlers for us?
I don't know, because here's the thing. Maybe like anatomically they're not maybe suited for basketball, but I also think that the mentality that has somebody going out for basketball might not be necessarily conducive to the mentality of someone that needs to be going out for wrestling.
Nah, I would.
Wrestling's gonna chew you up and spit you out. If you're doing this sport to try to look sexy and cool and get the girls and all this stuff, I got a rude awakening for you. You ain't gonna have time for girls. Yeah, you ain't gonna have. You ain't gonna. How dare you? You ain't gonna have time for girls because you're gonna be cutting weight and you're gonna be in sauna bags and you're gonna be training 3 hours a day. And then when are you gonna go hang out with friends when your Saturdays are gone because you're all day tournaments?
It's
a demanding
funny
sport.
You say sexy. They used to call the wrestling room the pit because we were downstairs and girls were just like, oh, it smells down there. They wouldn't talk to us during wrestling season.
Yeah, hey, relax.
You know what
we're working on it.
You know what girls would say to us though? They'd say, "I'll wait to go out with you when I weigh less than you do." I mean,
can I say something though? The 3 sports that in my opinion, create the best physiques are swimming, gymnastics, and wrestling. Like if you look at the physique of like a female or a male gymnast, they're just they're just built. If you look at a female swimmer or a male swimmer, just built. And if you look at like female and male wrestlers, dude, they have
Katie
the
Ledecky, you ever see the shoulders on that
dude,
girl?
yeah, you're talking about the swimmer, right?
Yeah.
She's got like 30 of the in the freestyle. I believe she has like the 30 top speeds.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
She's
basically she's
insane.
just competing against herself at this point. But the reason I bring that up is like I do think that there's a lot of sports that are sexy. I think football is a sexy sport. Like being the quarterback, being the big guys, and wearing the jerseys as like a team. You know what I mean? I think basketball is like a sexy sport. You could be the point guard.
Oh.
You could be the guy that's dunking the ball or whatever. Wrestling has never, and I don't think ever will be like that sexy sport. However, I think
Not since ancient Greece.
not since ancient Greece, but I think it's one of the sports that is the most demanding. And
Oh,
I don't know. I'm also super biased because I did play basketball when I was like in middle school and stuff like that. I was actually pretty good. You laugh, but I was a decent. How dare you? How fucking dare you?
I was at the middle
Bro,
school.
I was good at AHS. We were like 3 years back-to-back champs. Don't make me bring up middle school numbers, brother. But then high school rolled around, and then I was one of those 5'5" freshmen, and I'm like, yo, these guys are tall. And then Devon like grabbed me. He's like, you go, hey boy, come here.
You gonna get cut anyway.
What
Come
you doing
here.
on the basketball court? You the white boy. Come here. We're gonna get you in wrestling. He would touch me like, you 120. I'm like, yeah, and I was
They want no Albanians out there.
Can't even spell Albanian on the basketball court. No, but I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is the kids will gravitate towards everything that they will. I think the greatest form of like recruitment for that is the networking that the kids will do when they're talking about wrestling. When the kids go to school,
Right.
they're like, that's why I want to get more equipment and all this other stuff and the banquet and all that stuff.
Oh.
Because it is such a demanding sport. So I want the kids to feel fucking special. Like, hey, this is fucking
I totally
hard.
agree. And I really thought when our girls won conference and we
That
did
would,
so
like,
well
spur it.
that we would get more girls. But I think it also hurt that all of them graduated at
Yeah,
one
we
time.
lost. We had a team of like 8 girls, and we had 5 of them graduate in 1 year. It's rough,
Right.
man.
And then we had 2 returning and one with a lot of personal issues dealing with, and one just worked her butt off. And then unfortunately we lost the one little one that did come out this year.
Is she
New.
gonna come back?
I'm hoping.
I'm gonna adopt her. Anyway,
Hey, she emailed me to wish me Happy Father's Day.
did he?
Oh yeah, love that little kid.
Ugh.
I want to put her in my pocket.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, if you don't mind. This was the first year where last year I felt it a little bit, but I didn't spend as much time with the kids because that was the first. Last year was the first full year that I had with the kids, and then this previous season was my second full year.
Mm-hmm.
We had a couple seniors graduate, and literally a couple too. We
Your
had
first year.
yeah, that were there from like we had more seniors, but these were the kids that like were there for my first year, and then I saw them, and there was this very weird feeling that I was having where it's like, on one hand, I'm very happy to see the progress and the growth of them, like as individuals, as like young men coming up, you know what I mean? But then also like this like weird feeling of like, damn, like we're losing these kids, we're losing the captains, we're losing the leadership, we're losing a lot of the camaraderie, a lot of the good vibes and all of this stuff from the team, and a lot of just big shoes to fill kind of thing, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
But then like, yeah, on a team level, but also like on a personal level, I like these kids. And I thought to myself, like, it's gonna suck not having them in
And the
practice next year.
And it's, you'll find, well, Ford and I were talking about, we weren't much in track this year. And we had some of the most enjoyable kids to be around. We were very young on the boys' side, girls' side. I mean, we really enjoyed them. They didn't accomplish much, but I mean, it's weird. Sometimes you get attached to the teams that aren't very good because they work hard. They come farther with what they have. There have been championship teams that Devon and I've had. You know I kicked Haley Ford off the team after her junior year for cursing coaches out after she was coming back as a state champion.
Oh no!
And
you got her out of her senior year.
No, I kicked her off. I told her.
Did she come back though?
I said, you don't. Not only are you apologizing to me and the coaches, you're apologizing to your teammates.
But you put your foot down and you
Yeah.
said, "All right, get the fuck out of here."
And I said, she goes, "You're not gonna kick me off because I'm a state champion." I said, "That's exactly why I'm gonna kick you off."
Go to another school.
Which, ironically, she came back and she thanked Ford and I, and said, because as you've already alluded, we are pretty much one mind. We very seldom ever will disagree on anything. And we will usually defer to the other one if we think the other one
You guys
has.
consult with one another very
Actually,
often.
we don't have to really do it. We just kind of know where each other stands. It's, well, it's like
It's like a hive mind.
when I went and bought those Dr. Peppers for us 2 years ago at State, where he got eaten up with the bed bugs.
Yeah, dude.
And I
Shout out the Ramada, Colombia. Get your shit together.
when I bought him the pack of Pepsis, and he always says, "I don't drink no soda like that," and then I'll start to take him back. Oh, wait, okay. I mean, I jokingly call him my work wife.
You guys are like
Yeah.
I said earlier, I love
Yeah.
the relationship.
Yeah, it's.
But you brought Haley back onto the team, and she said that she thanked you guys.
She thanked us. She said because we never really paid. Well, Devon had paid attention because I don't really like basketball. I don't really see much use for it. It's a waste of gym mat space.
How
But
did the basketball team do this year?
Okay.
yeah, above
Over
average.
low five.
Were they
Yeah,
undefeated conference champions? No, that sucks.
But she ran all over her coaches in their sports.
Meaning, like she basically could do whatever she wants.
She
and
would cuss them out.
there was no accountability.
And she said, "You were the first coaches I've ever had that basically made me accountable." And when I was a young coach, Coach Devon Ford, when they were freshmen, he says, "You're going to have to stay on this one." Pointed her out and said, "You're going to have to stay on that one." And I mean,
Where's that fine line between, because we have
kicked Marcus off the football team. Tell that one.
maybe a little revisionist history.
uh,
We'll talk about that one later.
where is your fine line between disciplinary action like on a team? Because I've wrestled with this the last 3 years. On one hand, I need to be respected as a coach. And if you don't feel like you need to listen to me, okay, let me take a step back. The first layer of like why I think you should listen to me is like proof is in the pudding. You should listen to me because you can see that what it is that I'm coaching you will directly result in you winning more, you being in better shape, having a better outcome in this sport. But let's say that this kid is maybe doesn't see the value in that. Well, then I want you to listen to me because maybe you think I'm like a good role model. Maybe I'm the cool coach or whatever. I'm the buddy, you know what I mean? But then sometimes on some of those kids, like you're too friendly, so now they don't necessarily respect you when you say stop or, hey, you need to work on this or whatever. And then you have to get to the point where you're like the disciplinary coach. And then sometimes discipline doesn't work that, or not necessarily discipline, but, negative outcome coach, I guess. Like you didn't come to practice, you can't wrestle at this tournament or whatever. And I feel like I hate when we get to that point because I feel like I am now preventing this kid from doing the sport that they like in order to try to teach them a lesson. And I don't know where that fine line is. It's like, hey, I need you to learn all the things that we were talking about earlier in wrestling, about being accountable, being disciplined, being all these other things. And you might be a great wrestler, but if I don't teach you these other aspects, you're not going to get from this sport what you should.
Right, exactly.
But I also don't want to prevent you from competing and prevent you from doing the fun things because practice isn't fun. Making weight isn't fun. Tournaments, unless you're going for first place, it can at sometimes be a slog. I want you to be able to enjoy the tri-meets and like make weight and get your actual matches in. I don't want to take that away from you. So it's like I find that, and by the way, for like 95% of the kids, 1 and 2 work. Either they see the value in it.
There's going to be one kid who always gets your goat.
And I can't let that kid, maybe you disagree with me, I can't let that kid get away with murder because then that basically absolves everybody else from what they think I could possibly be. Well, why do I have to listen to Coach Z when so-and-so can do whatever the hell they want and they can come to practice whenever they want and do all this other stuff?
You didn't even know this last couple, especially this year, when a couple of kids, I think it was actually Nino or Merck came up and said, can Coach Z just hand out punishments without your approval? And Ford and I were just over there laughing because we're like, he needs to learn. He needs to learn how to do this. So we just kind of.
I don't even think I really punished anybody that bad.
Oh, there's a couple of times you got pissed and you were, and as long as no, there was a couple. I forget what it was. You were kind of. You could tell you were mad, and we kind of came in and says, just
Yeah.
Cool down. We're not saying we disagree with what you're saying. Just
But don't lose your job.
yeah. Well, no. Just don't let it become personal.
Yeah. That's a good point to make. That's a good point to make.
Thing to do. And I will tell you, in football, I have seen, and I learned it from my dad. My dad kicked a kid off the team, much like I kicked Haley Ford off. Mike Miano was this kid that ended up playing in the NFL for a season or two with the Chicago Bears. And thought his
shit didn't stink.
Yeah, and he's like, my dad set him back. Now, kid drove him nuts, but he knew the kid didn't have a dad. He didn't have, and he's like, took his captain star away, and he says, you want to get back on the team? You come and spend 2 weeks holding a dummy for everybody else. You be that guy you've been making fun of. You learn a little humility. And the kid drove my dad nuts. But he's like, it's my job to make him and what he be. But I've also seen on the same point, and I've done the same thing myself, and I've seen Devon do the same thing. You got to know where at some point there's some you're not going to save. You said you wanted to talk about education too, and this is the hardest thing I think for young teachers to get. I experienced a student teacher, not of my own, but next door to me, who wanted to save them all. You can't. You find the ones that you can, and you only got so many life preservers, and you have to. And it's cold-hearted, but you got to be strategic in what you're doing. You're going to get that kid on the team who's going to be a cancer. And as much as you may want to save them, and there are times I've even argued with, that's some of the arguments we've actually had, where I'm like, it's time to cut bait on this one. And he God love him, he won't give up until the very end on some of those kids. Now he'll punish them, but I mean, I'm like, we'd be better off as a team
without this person.
And these kids will learn more with them gone.
And so that's the fine line, right? That's the fine line. Because I do like,
and I'm old school. When you were talking about, you're not respecting me. The wealth of knowledge that you have about wrestling far exceeds mine. I mean, I have a journeyman's. I was a above average high school wrestler. I was a pretty mediocre college wrestler.
I played football though too.
Well, I was a football player,
yeah.
But I did. Honestly,
I was only a wrestler.
The only reason I played sports in college is because I knew I was going to coach, and I wanted to learn what I could.
Smart man.
And I went into both sports. The fact that I got varsity letters was, I'm just like, oh, okay. I mean, shoot, my football coach found a grad assistant in me, but I have a very old school belief on my knowledge may not be great. I'm coaching you, and you say, say you're a really good wrestler. You've been wrestling, going to Perler and all this stuff, and I'm your coach. I'm your adult. The job I need to teach you apparently is to respect people in positions of authority, and that's something our society vastly has problems with now. Respect me because maybe you don't think I've earned it, but right now I'm in a position of power over you. Even and I'm not saying I'm going to try to earn your respect. It's a two-way street. I understand. I just don't get it magically. But don't show me disrespect just because you think you're all that too.
Yeah, I agree 100%, and that's where I've said my first thing is let me show you that what I'm telling you is going to help you, and then also after that, I want you to feel like you have a relationship with me. I like Coach Z, or don't get it twisted. I'm not your friend. I'm your coach, and when I'm talking, shut the fuck up and listen. And I do resonate with what you're saying about sometimes you want to tell them, because this is something I learned in wrestling, that you can't demand respect, you have to earn it, right? So it's I know that respect is a two-way street. I have to earn these kids respect. And when you said earlier, when you get angry, you got to make sure you don't make it personal. That's the hard part, because I don't want to be that coach. It's do you guys understand what I could be doing, what my opportunity
Oh,
cost is to be
well,
here.
and
And I also don't want to be that coach that's like,
but here's the other thing. To care about them, you have to put that out there anyway. So it already is personal.
yeah,
So you've got to, there's self-sacrifice that goes in there because obviously you're doing it because you care about this kid.
well, now it's changed.
And now they've turned it into personal.
Yeah.
And now it's very, where I think a lot of young coaches fail because they're invested in the kid.
Yes.
It's personal, but then you got to step outside yourself to see the situation.
You're absolutely right. When I first started coaching, it was because Devon was like, hey, we could use a little bit of help. And then the second year, I was like, I like these kids. Like, this is kind of fun.
No, you fell in love hard.
Last year, yeah. Last year, it's like, this is a good group of kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's worth my time and effort. They are worth my time and effort.
And then you just had a ball this year.
Yeah, dude, this year was fun, wasn't it?
No.
I thought it was good. I think the kids had fun.
I think every year's fun.
Yeah, fair. Well, this is why I kind of wanted to ask. So, like, for me, I'm only in this 3 years, and I'm getting, like, hung up on, like, 2 kids that are graduating, right? I was one of your students that came up through Afton and then graduated. Like,
And as we said earlier, his mom
yeah, and then
was
his
one-
mom was someone
was
that you
your
taught.
teacher, yeah.
The
I have to-
incestual Afton education system. You
I
taught
have-
his mom taught me. Now I'm teaching his son.
My first 7th graders are in their mid-40s.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And I, at least when I had Nino's mom, I was a student teacher at the high school. She was a senior, and God, I love your mother because she made my life easy because she answered all the questions.
So how does that feel as an educator, as a coach? Like, what are okay, I want to be careful. Let's take a step back. Let me ask the first question. What are the emotions that you feel now at this point versus like year 1? When you first started coaching, did you have similar emotions that I'm currently feeling now? And then do they kind of dilute over the course of time?
Well, when you got, if we filmed you, I don't know if you ever watched yourself on, but
I like
Nino
that
can
too.
back me up here. When you're wrestling in the chair, you've seen it, right?
Hey, don't laugh.
But when you're new, well, I remember when I first started coaching football. I had just played college ball when I first started coaching. I mean, I literally, my last year of playing college ball was 89. Season of 90, I was coaching football. I was doing everything I could not to run on the field and tackle somebody. And now I find myself backpedaling so I don't get run over.
Those are big boys.
But pain's age gets us all. But the passion, it's, if you could take the passion from when you're young and take the knowledge from when you're old, you'd be the best coach in the world. Because there is so, I mean, I got just so physical, I mean, just almost mentally and physically just wrapped up in these kids' lives. I just wanted to be most successful. I mean, it was just, well, and I did the same thing when I was teaching. I remember my wife would make fun of me because my wife decided not to go on the 7.5-year college plan like I did. She
God bless.
graduated quickly.
Your college loved that. How many years? Sure.
Colleges.
Sorry. You want to spend how many years?
Yeah.
You're going to pay for all of them? Sounds great.
But she was teaching. She just finished up her 35th year when she retired. I'm only in my 30th, so that tells you the difference. And I'm actually older than her, so. But she would make fun of me when I was first grading papers because I'm like, oh, I know you knew that, when I'm just sitting there like commenting as I'm going through, like, I know you knew this. You can't get this right on the test. And it's the same thing with the kids. They're your children. Except, unlike your children, they're not going to always come back and see you. I mean, you are going to lose them. And I remember when my father retired from Afton and went over to teach with my mom at Lutheran South in retirement and collect another pension. Actually, he was a principal and didn't want to be a principal at Afton anymore. And they told him they were going to make him head principal, and he didn't want to be the head principal because they wouldn't let him coach. So he retired and went to Lutheran South. Which, I mean, as people who say, well, sometimes you don't get talent in Afton. It was nothing like Lutheran South. We never had any talent over there. I mean, we had a couple of years where we had a couple of sets of kids where we actually got above 500, and they treated us like we won the Super Bowl, and then those kids were gone. And we're like, how do we start over again? Because we went back to just being terrible again. And it's hard because not only do you love those kids, you loved what they were able to accomplish because in a lot of those cases, those kids, we were bringing them up as sophomores and just getting them executed their sophomore years. Well, like we put these freshmen, like Nino and Merck, just got slaughtered their freshman year on varsity, but they never backed down. And every year, well, now last couple of years, they get to be the executioner.
It's nice being the handler, not the nail.
And when you see that, you develop so much respect for it, and a little pride in there because you think you may have had a little bit to do with that, and yeah, it's hard. But then you realize when I sit back and I sitting there thinking, last time I had you sitting in my classroom in 7th grade, I'm like, that was a long time ago.
Well, here's the other thing too: is like kids can surprise you.
Oh yeah.
Like there were some kids when I first came in that first week, I almost lost my. Like I came in for 1 week and I was like, "You guys gotta get whipped into shape." And I had some parents call and they weren't necessarily too happy with the way that I coached. You know what I mean?
There were some other calls that you probably Ford never told you about.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, I listen. I almost got kicked out the first week that I coached, and I thought to myself like, either these kids are going to adapt and like overcome me as a coach because I'm gonna hold them to my standard, or I'm gonna get fired. Like that was like my mentality was like, well, this is the only way that I know because I want the kids to get from this sport the same thing I did, and they have to find that progress.
And I don't even know if you've known this, but what you have realized when you first start coaching, at least it was with me. I'm assuming because I saw some things in you that you're trying to mold them into, because you think, okay, this worked for me, so you're trying to mold them into you.
My image, yeah.
And what you got to realize is that you got to let them grow while pushing them, and you're still helping shape them, but you got to let them flourish where they're going to flourish. And you've learned that. And you've learned it, and trust me, you've learned it. And I think it's helped that you've came into coaching as you're not fresh out of college.
No, yeah, I'm a 32-year-old man.
Yeah,
so.
And I think that has helped you because you were already married. You're already pretty much
being a dad.
Yeah.
I think that was the catalyst, if I'm going to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah, that was the...
Because it did soften me, like 100%. And probably being like a
almost
girl
as soft
dad,
as Ford's gotten with his granddaughter.
Yeah, I think being a girl dad helped. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But also, it was just like this. I don't know. This is the way I think to myself is like, if I can't do it to the way that I perceive to be right, then either you have to let me go, or you have to show me a different way and present that argument of what really is right. So like, if you guys would have come in and said like, hey, the way you coach is wrong. This is how you need to coach, and here's why. Then I would have like adapted my coaching style. But what happened was the kids rose to the standard that was now being held. And that was what I think started that like down, like that snowball effect, because I came in there with a certain mentality. They rose to the occasion. So yeah, I developed like a respect for these kids. Like, good shit. Like, you guys could have quit.
There were some were some gentle tweaks in there too.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't remember, but because you always know you're about ready to get tweaked by Ford when he puts his arm around your shoulder, because you're gonna get the, hey, you might want to try.
Have you tried not yelling at the top of your lungs? What do you mean? Why would I do that? I'm curious though, to go back to the question
on him though.
Sorry.
Have you ever met anybody who could command a presence and never raises their voice? He's an oddity.
Very
to me.
few.
He is an oddity.
Well,
I played for one guy in college who just like that.
He did. The reason he doesn't have to is because the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
He doesn't have to raise his voice. Like, he doesn't have to congratulate you or get you to see or like the best way to describe Devon, even when I was in high school, because Esmond I was very lucky that I got to go to school with some of his kids. You know what I mean? So I instantly respected Devon because I was getting fucking worked by Esmond and DJ. You know what I mean? So I was like, okay, well, if these kids are working me, and that's their dad, and that's like who taught them. Well, maybe I should probably listen to that guy because these kids are making me look like a
Yeah.
little kid. You know what I mean? So let's listen to this guy, and it worked. And then I got my state medal. You know, so I was like, okay, maybe he doesn't have to raise his voice because he forever has my respect.
Yeah.
Because he's done so much for me. And then that isolated story that I have, I'm sure there's
Oh, yeah.
literally millions of that. So it's like he's the prime example of, I'm sure earlier in his life, he probably did have to raise his voice. Or maybe he did have to do some things. But over the course of time, 30s, 40s, 50s, dude, the proof is in the pudding. The body of work speaks for itself. So now Devon's at the point where, yeah, he should be the soft-spoken guy because what more can he do? How much more does he have to show
Well,
you?
and then when he does actually raise his voice, people listen.
I've never heard him raise his voice.
The last time I heard him raise his voice was to my own son.
Really?
Actually, right to you. No, because
Recently?
His freshman year, he cursed out his dad in his game, and he was walking away from me.
That's a big no-no.
He was like a steak, and me and Ford as pit bulls just like, and I stepped aside and let Ford wear him out, and then I pulled him aside. I said, "Look," because I think you were mad because you'd thrown an interception or something. I said, "Hey, it happens. The better quarterback you're going to be is when you just let it go, and next play." And then we that's when you and I actually got kind of tight.
Well, I actually have a question for you, if you don't mind. Turn your camera mic on for this one. So for me, I only had like two coaches that I really like say were like father figures or like mentors to me, and that was Shu and Ford, both of my wrestling coaches, head coach and assistant
Two of my
coach.
good friends.
Yep. But you have like the football coaches, you have the baseball coaches, you have the wrestling coaches. I'm curious to see how do you feel the same way with all of them? Are there certain ones that you have more affinity towards? Obviously, like for instance, Ford, you have an immense amount of respect for it.
Yeah.
And a lot of that respect is probably because of proximity. Your father has respect, and the other coaches that coach you have respect. So like it's kind of like, oh, this is an easy way. But I'm curious to hear from you, like, are all coaches made equal?
No.
What seems to be the differentiation for you? Is it the sport or the individual?
Individual. But it's good that, like, football and wrestling have similar coaches for the most part. So you get to see both sides of those coaches for both seasons. But, like, I guess, like, similar to Coach Hill, when I was growing up, my dad's a coach, so I've always been around the coaching. So I know how much respect and how much they put into it. So, like, I've never, like, been like that. Maybe I've been harder to my dad than any other coach in my life. But, no, they're not all made.
Yeah, he never talked to Ford and I the way.
That's interesting.
They
Well,
caught that day. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, right? That proximity, and that's something that, to go back to the kids, is like, I want to be your friend. I do, because if you feel comfortable with me, you'll let me in. Like, and if you let me in, that means I can really like connect with you, and then that like prosperous nature of like you'll really listen to me will flourish, right? However, don't get it fucking twisted. You don't get to talk to me the way you talk
Right.
to your friends. Dude, I had some of the kids last year like try to add me on Snapchat and Facebook, and I was like, you guys are out of your minds. I was like, you're lucky you have my email, let alone any of this stuff. After they graduate, whatever. But like, as long as you're still in school, we're not.
yeah.
I'm coach. You're not my friend.
Right.
I feel like that's a healthy line to draw.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd also say, Nino, I don't know if you agree with this, but I think wrestling, because of the intensity, is something that leads to you getting close. And football, because of
Yeah,
it.
it's a proximity sport.
Baseball is a pretty relaxed sport. Like, I don't get the kids that I would coach in pole vault, like Rachel Ederly. I have a great relationship. She and I still go out to eat, and she's got to be pushing
She's
mid-30s.
30, 34.
Yeah.
She's 2 years older than me, I think.
But it doesn't lend itself to the kind of intimate, tight.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Do you know how much I've beat his ass?
Oh yeah.
Well, that's what I was about to say.
How
like,
much I worked this boy?
It's not like football. Like the
Well, and that's why
It's not like in football.
I was bragging. No
Yeah,
one.
but
No
they
one.
like.
that's
it's not
why
like
Coach
the coaches
Kolarski and I
line
have
up.
that bond, because Ford got out his junior year, and then I coached him.
Senior year.
Yeah, and I like to think he had gotten in trouble in a bunch of matches and like blowing up,
Yeah, he got in
and
fights.
we got him. I kind of got him to calm down a little bit, and we just had a really good. And if you always notice, that's why he always comes and talks to me instead, because
You guys have that relationship.
yeah,
I don't know. I agree.
No, I mean, it's more of an adult. I mean, it's an adult one now. He's probably more adult than I am, but
But no, wrestling, like the coaches wise, is probably the most intimate like relationship you
Yeah.
have with coaches because they're out there on the mats, like especially you.
Yeah, like
we're
working
wrestling
with
each
you.
other.
Yeah.
It's not like in football, like Coach Hill's gonna come out of nowhere and tackle me. You know,
Well,
like
watch out for next
actually,
season.
I
He's
did
gonna show
one. His sophomore year, we were doing tackling rotations. I laid him out.
Yeah.
You didn't have to add that last part. So if I
Still
can,
haven't been fired yet.
if I can, I want to go back to that question though, because one of the things I said was like, so you did have similar emotions to what I'm experiencing now with like
Oh yeah,
this feeling of loss, especially in the room. You know what I mean? Obviously, in a weird way, I actually talk to them now more than ever because now they are graduates. So-
Right.
and I told you guys, I'm like, now you guys are like alumni and peers with me. I'm not your coach anymore, right?
and I will tell you this: your first set, your first kids you coach, are always going to be.
Like special.
Yeah, I mean, I can go.
Sorry,
back-
Toby.
the kids that you are kids I coached at Afton. You remember? Well, he was before you. But Jay Harmon,
No.
I coached his.
Forgive me.
I coached his dad, and Steen, Maddie Steen's, with the Steen trainer that we had, Michelle Steen. Do you remember her? Okay.
Brother, I've been hit in the head a lot.
Okay. I coached their dad in wrestling in high school, and that was in 91. Wrestling and in football. He was a 135-pound guard, which,
God bless.
yeah, tough as nails. One of the toughest kids I've ever met. I every time I can, I try to check up on him, see how, just because, and the first couple of groups I had over at Lutheran South, you care deeply about those kids. A matter of fact, actually, one of them was trying to get Nick an internship. A kid who's a lawyer. Rachel Ederly. But what's weird is once you have kids, it's weird. Like on my teaching career, my first couple of years before I had kids, I could tell you what kids were in what period, what room I taught them in, what row, everything. And then after I had kids, it all blurs.
Yeah. Why do you think it's like a hierarchy thing?
Well, because
You have your own
your priority
children.
shifts.
Yeah.
Whether you're your life, then you realize what life really is.
I agree with that. So then let me ask you this. Where are you at now at this point of your like education / coaching career? I want to be careful how I ask this question because I don't want to seem disrespectful. Do you care when they graduate at this point? Or is it just like, okay, another year?
No, I miss them. Like, it was nice as a coach because last year with Isaac, as crazy as those girls were, we didn't have to worry about anything because Isaac took care of it, held it all down. Merck and Nino held it down. Do we have somebody that can hold it down this year? We'll see. I think we got one, the young one, but don't want to get that ego blown up a little bit.
I
But,
know. Too late now.
well, valid. But you get attached, but it gets easier
Yeah.
because you understand the cycle.
Yeah, it's the natural, I guess, like.
But it doesn't make it any. I mean, you're sad to see kids go.
Yeah, you know what? It goes a step further too. Like maybe I don't want to kind of like,
I'll tell you, one of the kids that I broke my heart when he retired. I mean, or graduated. Would have been. You would remember when you were a little kid. Remember the No brothers, Eddie and Wayne. Two Vietnamese kids. And they were on gosh awful wrestling teams and gosh awful football teams. Their senior year, I think we were 2-8, and just got annihilated. It was Nick's sophomore year. Nick, because of his autism, has a hard time bonding and having friendships. Wayno took him under his wing, and now this is the part that I thought, and this I have the utmost respect for this kid. Wayno actually taught Nick his position because he knew it'd be better for the team if Nick played in his position and trained Nick up to take his job in football.
Oh wow.
And then as a senior, as Nick was a sophomore, took Nick out, made sure he was doing social things, wouldn't let, even though he was like 3'0", wouldn't let anybody pick on Nick because everybody loved Wayno. Matter of fact, they still go out and do things.
For those that don't know, his son Nick is literally a Goliath of a man. So I don't know. Were people picking on him in high school?
A lot.
Wow, really?
Yeah, there was.
Shocking.
There was well, we didn't. My wife and I didn't find out until he was a senior that there was a football player who was Nick got into a fight his freshman year, and I went up to the high school. That was my last.
Like a fist fight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he lost his temper, and I went up to high school and I wore him out. I mean,
what are you doing? How dare you?
Belt may have jumped out of the loops.
Yeah.
And so he just thought he couldn't. And I never told him, don't defend yourself. But, and the funny thing is, he's very quick to defend
Other people.
but he won't defend himself. As huge as he is, and I mean, well, we had to tell him what to go 20% against the kids when he worked out with them because he was even whooping Eric Colley's like, can you tell him when he does that to me?
I'll never forget the day Mercury like burst out the room and cried. It's bullshit, man. I was like, damn. Love you, Merc. You pussy.
But I mean, he wears me out. But I'm like, and we found out this kid was basically sexually harassing him, saying, well, you know, in your high school, but at least, you know, he's
Just
calling
saying things.
Well, and Nick is very he just now is getting to where he mentally he's where he would be in college. He's just always a little behind the curve, and this kid was basically saying you're gay. You know, he has one best friend, Coach. I don't think they come up and help at the tournament. The Westermeyer brothers.
Yeah. Christian
and Connor and
the brothers,
Cole. Their mom used to babysit our kids, and and for those people who don't know, I have two other autistic sons who are severely autistic, and they've never not known each other. When people now this kid wouldn't mess with Connor because Nick would kill him, and we didn't find out it was halfway through his senior year in football, and God love him, Ford was the one who caught it. Kid was coming around and punching Nick in the balls, and saying, "You know you're gay. You know you like it."
Oh, Jesus.
And Nick just put his head down and he was like beat red. And Ford goes, "Nick, you don't have to take that." He said, "No, my dad will get mad at me." He said, "I guarantee your father will not get mad at you." He said, he does that again, you body slam him. The kid walked over, swung at Nick. Nick picked him up. I mean, just wham! I come over, all the coaches. His dad, Oliver, Ford are just rolling. They said, "You just missed it." And he said, "Nick just," and then it comes out later on because then he started the far away assault picking on him, and we didn't find this all out until a blow up in the principal's office, and it was, and I mean it's hard for me for the rest of that year for me because I was in the building by then. I can honestly say I've never ever wanted to hurt a high school kid, except for that one.
And that one kid.
And I knew I had to step back. And I purposely, I mean, this kid senior year, he was transferred to my class, and I said, "You need to get that kid out of there."
When
I
things
said,
like
"I will
this,
kill him."
When things like this occur, I want to be very careful how we navigate towards this part of the conversation. Forgive me. What is the correspondence with the family members like? Because we always say like, so
It was.
let me add this caveat. I always say this, like, I want to be very careful how I say this. I feel like the paradigm of like the bully and the bullied has always existed. But
Yes.
I don't think any parent, like when they think about their kid, thinks, "Oh, my kid's definitely like the bully at school." You know what I mean? I think all the parents have this like vision of their kid as like, "Oh, like they wouldn't do this or that or whatever." And then a lot of times when they're alerted for these things, it comes to as like a surprise or a shock to them.
Well, I'll say bullying has taken on you very rarely get the physical bullying anymore.
Now it's way worse. It's all the emotional.
It's emotional. I
outside
mean, you're
school.
hitting. I mean, it's just, and it's nonstop because it's media. It's
It's Instagram, it's
yeah.
Facebook.
It's just and
when you're at school, when you're not at school.
because of that, we did not let Nick have social media until he got into college.
Can I be honest with you? I think me and Bruna talk about that. One of the things that scares the shit out of me is like, not just the fact that like adults could then have like access to communicate with my daughter, but like all the other things, the hypersexualization, the unrealistic body standards.
You have and we'll just and the trolling for minor. I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
That scares. Hey, when
dude, there's like a million predator catching accounts. I'm like, oh Jesus.
With our two other children, like when my oldest, who's now 27, when he started in pre-K, and we didn't know that the teacher we had was the best he was ever going to have, woman by the name of Beth Morozowitz. I would genuflect if it wouldn't hit the mic, but I mean, this woman was amazing. But I went in and told him, I said, because I had heard all these horror stories of special needs people being sexually molested and stuff like that.
By teachers?
No, I mean, just like...
Oh, just in general. Forget it. Okay, I'm sorry.
And
you made it sound like the teacher was like...
No,
forgive me.
And I'm like, and that we could do a whole show on just special ed teachers who are just saints.
I had Karen Simoncelli on and she was telling me about that.
But I told this woman and all the people in this IEP, I said, I just want you to know if anything happens to my child, I said, I've already told my wife I'll end up in jail because I'll kill every one of you.
Yeah.
And I said, I won't have any remorse doing it. And the oldest guy looked at me. This gal laughed and she goes, baby, it'll be all right. But yeah, I said, it's just, well, imagine where you are with your daughter. Your daughter's
Tim, I would burn the world.
Oh no, but I'm saying, I'm where she is mentally.
Yeah.
That's where my two children will be the remainder of their life. So that protectiveness you have, even though the youngest one makes Nick look little, he's 6'7", could probably rip a bear apart, but is very gentle. It's I don't know, it's the whole bullying thing, I don't know. I mean, they don't care, so we don't really have to worry about it. That's more like we've been places with them where my wife, when they were little, we went, and my youngest, as far as the autism goes, Nick has the least of it. My oldest has a pretty fair amount, but he is very quiet and self-contained. My youngest, the best way I can describe it, it's just like noise in your head. It's like you could see things were painful, like fluorescent lights used to drive him insane. I mean, we were somewhere in Indiana where out in the middle of BFE, I think it was French Lick where Larry Bird is from. We were at this resort and he melted down, and this manager of this restaurant was just, I didn't know what had been, just very rude, cutting, and I mean, shredded my wife. I come down there, my wife's. So I take them up to get everybody in the room, and I come down. I'm ready to
livid, yeah.
I'm ready to take this.
What do you mean the manager was shredding your wife? Meaning like what about your kids?
Just if you can't handle your children, don't bring them out in public.
Got you.
And I was ready to tear this man's arms. I mean, this is when I was younger and still fairly put together. Still like it. I was going to kill this man. And I mean, I very rarely will complain about service at places like that because I know everybody's got a job. Everybody has a bad day. You know, I understand that kind of stuff. I had the general manager. I was ready to fight people. I was ready to, I mean.
Can I ask you something? And if you don't want to talk about this, remember, you only have to talk about the things you want to talk about.
Nope.
So I'll ask questions, and if you want, you could tell me.
I'm an open book, man. I have no secrets. I'm not smart enough to keep secrets.
I think a lot about the world that my daughter will inherit because at some point I will no longer exist in it, and she will have to fend for herself. So, like as a father, and
that terrifies me that I won't be there to defend my children because
that's where I was going to get at with this.
Yeah.
Is like essentially, you know, I only have one kid, and you know, knock on wood, nothing seems to be inhibiting her in any way. However, you have 3 sons, and to be completely frank with you, I think Nick is actually like a very like sharp, like you say Nick's on the spectrum. You know, me and you go back and forth on this one. I never thought he was. I just thought he was like
quirky.
Yeah,
Most people see him as quirky.
Yeah. I work in information systems, so like believe me, I work with a lot of guys that are way worse than Nick. Anyway, and they don't have any problems.
The funny thing about Nick is everybody, especially like if have you ever seen the accountant movies?
Yeah.
Everybody thinks they're these calculated. Nick is totally, as far as history, dude knows all of the Roman emperors in order.
Based.
I mean, it just.
And
But they think
Egyptian pharaohs.
Yeah, I mean, he'll sit there and go, and you just gotta say, okay, done. But everybody thinks that all autistic kids are technology geniuses. And my youngest, you could pull a computer apart and he'll put it back together and can't speak, but he can do that. Nick gets confused with a cell phone.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just kind of funny.
Everyone has an affinity. I guess what I was trying to say was like, Nick for me seems capable. Like, I wouldn't.
I would say
capable.
capable. To say. We're dealing with him as, like I said, the developmental delay. He is still acting like he's a sophomore in high school as far as his.
Brother, he's a 20-something-year-old man. Do you remember when you were that age?
Oh yeah, I was an idiot
up until today.
And see, that's where he and his mother and I are. I think that he needs to fail some, but she's one of those people, and God love her because she does it for me too. So I'm not complaining. If I drop the ball on something, she'll just get mad and she'll just do it herself because my wife is the most efficient.
Every woman ever.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
My wife could outplan God. Well, no, but I mean, she is. My wife is amazing, but she's getting to the point where she's letting him start to fail. I was lucky because I was a train wreck, just like you talked about. I had to drop out of college for a while, I was working like 75, 80 hours a week because I had to pay off a bunch of debts. And and that's when I grew up. I actually want Nick to go in the Air Force, but we got to get him off he's on like an anxiety med. We got to get him off that for a year before he can go in.
Why the Air Force? Like, why? You think the military will teach him something?
Military, you put Nick in a regimented lifestyle. Like when he was playing college football, awesome. Always had the best grades on the team, all that. He just does really well in regimented.
That's corporate America.
And he likes people knowing exactly when things are going to happen, and it's about it. And you get that regiment, and it's not as intense like the Army or the Navy or the.
A bunch of Air Force people are going to be like, "What is he?"
Oh no! Well, my little brother's in the Air Force.
Okay.
So I'm not, and he and I have actually.
Let me take a step back though. Like, what do you? Okay, I want to be very careful how I ask this.
You're not going to offend me, don't worry.
I know, but I want to make sure my question is well articulated. Like, what is it that you think it is lacking in him? Because he's how old? 25, 24? He's young.
25.
Yeah, dude. I don't want to
well,
give
okay.
him all the grace in the world.
Let me back up and explain why my wife and I are worried. Going back to what you said, when you're gone and your daughter's here on her own, he's our sole hope for taking care of his brothers. Yeah. Do you understand why we worry?
Like you're basically
we need him to get to where.
Yeah, but
because
I agree, I would also still say that he's still young. So like, I think I know what you're saying. Like the demands and the responsibilities.
But things happen. I mean, I could get sick. My wife could get sick. You know what I'm saying?
I agree.
I mean, she's already had cancer.
Yeah, and beating it. Thank God.
Yeah, and
But let me add this caveat. It took my mom's death to like make me like step up. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like he has a lot of the building blocks already.
Oh yeah, I agree. And I think I agree with you. Now you have to understand my wife is a perfectionist, why she married me. I mean
you're a fixer-upper?
I think I'm her lifelong project. But
everyone needs a goal.
Yeah. She's gonna be Gandhi by the time she's done with me.
Dude.
But she thinks that things should be a team, and he's getting there, but he's not helping himself. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I get what you're saying. Have you ever had the discussion with him?
Oh yeah.
And how does he feel about that
Well,
responsibility?
he's not. One reason I love this kid is because he has a pretty realistic view of what the world is, what he can do, and what my son thinks. Okay, I'm going to go to law school for a year, and then I'll be a lawyer, and then I'm going to be a judge. I'm like, that is not how it works.
I wish, brother.
I said that is not. I said, no, I'm not saying you wouldn't be good at it. Well, here's the other thing: getting into law school. The reason we put him in the paralegal program, him getting into law school, even though his grades are really good, the LSAT is a time test which would wig him out.
Yeah.
He does not like one of the fights he got into at school. Bain, when he was a gym teacher, they were playing around the world with a timer, and this kid was messing with him. So Nick picked the kid up and body slammed him. He doesn't deal with stress well.
I like this kid.
And well, I'll tell you about that another time. But he gets rattled real easily. The bar would be easy for him because Nick memorizes everything he reads. He is, if he doesn't have a photographic memory, he has very close, because he can read. When he had Esselman and his dad, when you tell him to read this chapter, he reads the whole thing. He doesn't skim. I mean, he knows it. Like, he'll quote it back to you. It's kind of scary.
Okay, so then I can understand where you're going with this conversation in terms of, like, theory versus application, how reality functions and works. But, like, I would also still say that, like, when I was 25, dude, when I was 20, I thought I was like, post high school.
Oh, we've talked about that. If
Yeah.
our wives, you're lucky your wife had mercy on you, because if my wife had met me when I was like 21, she'd have run like there was a building on fire.
She gave me one of the best compliments I've ever been given ever in my life today. We were having lunch, and we were like, how like you're on your phone and like you get the time hops or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
She just goes, "You've changed into the man that I thought you'd be," and I was like,
Which shows that she had foresight.
Yeah, I was like, appreciate that. I was like, and I had somebody come back. I was just like, still working. You know what I mean?
But she's really saying in the back of her mind that I changed you into the man that I was.
But that's kind of what I'm getting at to this is like, and by no means am I trying to like tell you anything. It's more of like a question of like, do you think maybe at times you're presenting too much responsibility on him too early?
No, I don't disagree with that.
Like I do acknowledge that things can happen.
I mean,
we can leave here today and get hit by a car, right?
I mean, right now we're lucky with his brothers because we have a network of people. My little brother, who's actually my adopted little brother, not really even adopted legally. We just kind of picked him up. My parents took him strays along the way, and his son is working with us, and we are probably going to make him one of the guardians of our children. We have a gal who was a para for us for a long time and just babysat the boys, and was wonderful. She right now is the legal guardian should anything happen to us. But we're kind of hoping that Nick will come into that role.
Yeah. Do you worry about the financial stress that that'll put on
him?
All of it.
Oh, yeah, especially with things that are being talked about. I mean, I don't want to change topics on
No,
it.
go ahead.
But things that are being worked around in Department of Health and people say, well, that can't happen until the budget. Well, they're already in court because they're turning off spigots of financing to certain things. And my children get a lot of money out of the Department of Mental Health. And let me tell you, when Missouri, our current senator, I'm blanking on his name, not
Hawley?
No, the other one, Schmidt, who I actually campaigned for when he was a state senator, he wrote the autism bill that basically said insurance companies couldn't deny funding for autism, but before the Obamacare.
Yeah.
And he made sure that they covered all of the therapies. He has an autistic son also. Great guy. Don't agree with his politics, and I wouldn't campaign for him now, but people
change.
Yeah, just amazing changed our lives, and then our children started getting, my oldest and youngest started getting Social Security benefits, which are something that could be in danger now. Right now,
Well, they won't exist in 10 years in the current trajectory.
they keep saying that, but
No, I mean, the fund will.
no, I'm saying SSI. I'm not talking about retirement SSI. I'm talking about
I'm talking about,
disability.
Tim, I'm talking about all of it. $37 trillion in debt. What are we talking about? If we can't get to the point where we're balancing a budget and being fiscally responsible, none of this works.
Well, we've been, how long have we been teetering on this mountain?
20 years.
Yeah, longer than that.
Well, I mean, you could also say, like, ever since Nixon got us off the gold standard. I want to be careful how I go down this path, because I want to be very upfront about my true thoughts while also being sensitive to your plight. And you and I have had many talks about, like, a myriad of things, but I go back and forth on government subsidies, taxation, just the myriad of topics of, like, funding certain things, and who are we as a society, and all these like higher level questions.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that we have, like, a moral obligation to take care of, what was the saying, like, you're only as strong as, like, the weakest link, or something like that, and that we should develop a society, especially one as abundant as America. We should develop a society that could take care of all of its citizens and all of its children. You know what I mean? And I do like that thought. My problem is the current trajectory, the current landscape, and how we do it. It just doesn't seem to be a priority for anybody. And then when people, tell me, Democrats are for this and Republicans take away that, and then, Republicans are for this and Democrats take away this, I've been getting very increasingly black pilled, which, for those that don't know what black pill means, like, there's the red pill that means, like, you're more conservative based, quote unquote, and there's the blue pill, you're more liberal, woke, right? Then the black pill is like, you're just kind of like a doomer gloomer. And I hate to say it that way, but, like,
I don't disagree. I'm of the mind, I don't vote. I don't think, this last election, I pretty much voted a straight ticket, but I will research each person. And I honestly don't vote for party. I get to your black pill point. I vote for who I think is going to do less damage.
yeah, that's such a shitty way to vote.
I
isn't
know,
it?
because when I teach American history, I'm trying to teach them, this is, the morals of our,
Our founding documents,
Yeah,
our
and-
founding fathers,
and
all the trials and tribulations of a nascent America.
and I sit there and try to think about what those guys would think if they saw the dumpster fire that we got going.
I think they would see an extreme lack of patriotism. And that's what I go back to.
Now, and here's the thing that I always warn people when you say lack of patriotism. Don't forget that John Adams, George Washington, Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin was taken to England and dressed down for his lack of patriotism, because he actually was a Tory. He was sent by the Americans over there because they thought they'll like him, and he came back a patriot because of the way he'd been dressed down. Because you can't, people have got to have the ability to complain.
Agreed.
Our nation was built on that. Now,
Well, it's a right.
what people are
Freedom of
calling lack of patriot, what I would say that what that is people's lack of investment.
Elaborate.
What most people are seeing is, what are you doing for me? Not the whole John F. Kennedy. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And I'm a big, and you and I have talked about this before. I'm a big believer that after high school, after college, not necessary military service, but I think if everybody had, in most countries where you have to do 2 years of service to the country in some way, like you go to medical school, you become a doctor, go work at a clinic for 2 years. We'll pay off your loans. You want to be business? Okay, go help people do financial planning who are poor and can't. There's something, and I think if we did that, our society has become, and it's due to the success of the stock market. Everybody's, more money. It's what about me? You and I have talked about this numerous times.
I agree somewhat. on a higher level, I agree. What I meant by patriotism is exactly what you're saying about like giving back to the program or to the country or to the people. That
Well, what
gave
we
to
talked
you.
about earlier, you coming back and helping the wrestling program.
It gave to
you're,
me.
you're a Cougar Patriot, so yeah, you're returning. And in the younger
hold up, though.
generations, I don't think there is that.
No, but here's the caveat though. It should always have been and should always be something that stems from within, that you feel like you need to give back, right? So like no one's holding a gun to my head telling me to coach at Afton. No one's forcing me to give up like a third of my wealth to go coach at Afton. It is something that I feel a calling to because I saw the value in what it gave me. And this is where I'm kind of coming back is like, I want to live in an America that's robust economically, socially, liberally, and conservatively. I want good conservative values for our youth, and I want liberal mentalities for our adults so that we can actually live and let live, right? However, what's going on right now, it's not serving anyone. Like, I genuinely feel like no one is being served properly. Not a Fox News dad watching conservative, not a CNN wokey liberal, not a libertarian YouTuber. Like no one is necessarily they're having their boxes checked right now. And I'll explain why I say this. I voted Trump this last election because I was under the mentality that I had.
Kennedy.
No. Well, I was gonna vote for RFK Jr. Yeah, but he stepped down. Fun fact: we did some work for him, and anyway, I'll tell you that off the record. But your previous thought process of like who will do the worst damage, I didn't have that. I genuinely had some hope. I was like, good, if we have DJT in there and he actually brings in like a team of like outsiders. My mentality has always been if you do the exact same thing and expect a different result, that's the definition of insanity. And for the better part of my life, since 1998, like consciousness, I've seen kind of the same playbook being done, right?
That's the year you were born.
No, I was born 92, but like 98 was when I started like, you know what I mean?
Killing me, Smalls.
Let me put it this way. For the last 25 years, the entirety of the time that I was like conscious, I've only known war and strife in the Middle East. Ever since September 11th, right?
Well,
there's never been a time where we have not been in the Middle East in some sort of conflict.
okay, well, news alert. There's never been not strife in the Middle East.
Very fair. But does it always require American intervention would be my question. So what I'm trying to say is, does it always require American intervention getting you to $38 trillion of debt? Does it always require American intervention to basically be the police of the world and then have more and more countries hate you over the course of time? Now, I'm not trying to nitpick on like Middle East politics, right? But I guess what I am trying to say is, when I voted for Donald Trump, I thought to myself, if we bring in a different group of people, not necessarily like your political class, not the aristocracy, what have you. I mean, of course, some of them are wealthy. Perhaps we could get...
Don't read John Adams then, because you're
I did read John Adams. It's a great book. And 1776. It's a great book.
Oh, amazing. McCullough's great.
He's an amazing... By the way, you know what? Off topic. Actually, no. Let me finish this thought. Forgive me, because I don't want to.
Because we keep going down a different.
Yeah, I don't want to lose my train of thought, and we're like, ooh, squirrel. I guess my mentality
I'm ADD,
is,
right?
well, to bring it back to like this thought process, you have like a social security for your kids and like these safety nets for your kids. Like whenever I think of safety nets, I think of your kids as like the prime example. Like these are the people who need this. These are the programs that we should create to fund this. But unless we can get our fiscal house in order, unless we can decide what we as a nation truly find important. For instance, I voted Donald Trump because a lot of the rhetoric was end this war, end that war, stop doing this. And I was like, yes, please.
So
I'd love
I guess
that.
the press conferences today weren't to your liking.
I'm not liking a lot of the trajectories on a lot of things, to be honest with you. I'll give you an example of one thing that I would have done. I wish he would have doubled down with the trade war in China. I really do. I wanted 3 months of 140% tariffs. I'm probably on the minority of that because I understand what that will mean in the short term for a lot of people. I'm not ignorant to the outcomes of what I want, but I also know what that would have meant long term, right? For like geopolitically, socioeconomically, what have you. Anyway, we settled with 60% tariffs, which is an immense win. And the money that's going to bring in is amazing. But then when you couple this tax bill, I was telling other people about this, is like, you are going to codify and solidify a lot of these tax cuts, which I'm for. The less money my government takes from me, the better. That is the hill I die on. However, you cannot cut my taxes and then also increase spending on a myriad of things that I don't find value in. I'm tired, Tim. I'm really fucking tired of my tax dollars going to bomb brown people across the world. I'm tired of my tax dollars in proxy wars with countries that have no business fighting superpowers. I'm tired of my tax dollars being spent for this. I would prefer my tax dollars being spent on your kids when you're no longer here.
So what are your
Or-
feelings on NATO?
I think it's one of the worst things that's ever existed, to be completely honest with you. I think post-Cold War, actually, I'll go a step back. I think post-World War II, we lived in a different world where America definitely had like that torch of leadership, right? And for the longest time, we did well with that. Once the Soviet Union developed their bomb, it kind of leveled the playing field. U.S. history became then world history by proxy. And I think in the last 30 to 40 years, after the fall of the Soviet Union, we have been very poor winners. And that at any moment,
I wouldn't disagree with that.
and at any moment, we could have been more inclusive.
But from a business standpoint, what does NATO do?
It ensures a military-industrial complex.
Okay, I'm not going to deny that. But what does it do? It keeps a lot of fighting down in the places where we're trying to get minerals, if you stop and think about it, a lot of the reasons why it was formed was to get supply lines and everything going. It keeps the machine running.
Well, then let me introduce you this argument then. If that were the case, in terms of like raw resources, minerals, peace through all this, peace through strength, right? Unity and all this other stuff. Why is it that in my lifetime, this seems to be the most tumultuous time where there are like one open war where if America got involved could lead to the destruction of the world. And now there might be a second war where if America gets involved could lead to the destruction of the world. Not to mention, if we're talking about economics, like pure economics, China's running circles around us. We were talking about the Japanese bond market, I think off the record, and I can bring it back on the record. You cannot tell me that the course of action that we've taken as a nation the past 30, 40 years has been one that's smart. How do you get $38 trillion in debt? How do you become... Let me take a step back because
I forget what movie it's from, but there's a
But I wanna say one
quote
thing.
that goes, "We're always one case of tequila away from World War III."
Yeah, I want to say one thing because I'm about to critique America, but I need everybody to understand I love this country. There's nowhere else I'd rather live. My passion stems...
You can love your brother who can piss you off.
Yeah. My passion stems from an affinity for this country.
Not talking about you, Andy. Just make it up.
So I just want to make sure that that's said. Like I'm not trying to say like oh I want to live in Russia or China. No, I don't. I only want to live in America.
You don't go live with Tucker.
Yeah, dude, I think Tucker's a one in a generation talent.
No.
I think
I do too, but from a different spec point.
Well, let me ask you this: you say that about like Russia, but clearly you saw the interview with him and Ted Cruz recently, right?
I saw parts of it.
2 hours.
I didn't watch
He
it.
eviscerates him.
Yeah.
And the reason why he eviscerates him is because he's taking logical, like, you made the comment that Tucker would want to go live in Russia. May I ask for you to extrapolate why you think that?
I was hearkening
It's a
back.
joke. It's
I
a
was
joke.
hearkening back to when he was
Over in
interviewed
Russia.
over in Putin and
Talking about how good their cities were.
everything's wonderful over there.
Yeah.
Well, the fact that what he never talked about when he talked about all this stuff is so cheap that basically buying groceries is more than the average person makes in a month. I mean, it's like, okay, first of all, I read an article the other day. It was amazing. It was basically talked about how news media isn't news media. Basically, they're signing people up for signs because they want followers. They want clicks. They want
Attention economy.
Yeah, and it's not you're not getting the news that like when I was a kid where people were forthright, they were stand up to authority, and
Like the Walter Cronkites of the world.
Yeah, you're not going to get that era.
Can I be honest with you?
What?
I think it's always been that. There were just less players in the game. And the barriers to entry were so vast and the monopolies were so entrenched that I think even if it
You-
wasn't
you-
the case,
you-
you wouldn't have known it.
No.
What else? What other medium was there other than radio and television?
Oh no, I don't.
Newspapers,
well,
right?
newspaper. But man, I first thing, TV has screwed up a lot of things, because when it was newspapers, like you go through our history, newspapers did more to shape this country, and unfortunately,
There were also propagandists
with
run.
no, that's not
Thomas
that.
Jefferson
But-
had his own.
Oh
John
yeah,
Adams had his own. They would
I don't disagree with that.
They would run
But here's the
smear
thing.
campaigns on one another.
When you have those, you'll always get one that kind of springs up in the middle, because people get tired of, just like they're getting tired of the Foxes, the CNNs, and all that. These other little micro and podcasts are popping up, which is, I think, is awesome, because from there you actually get some real news.
As long as it forces them to critically think. Here's my problem with podcasts.
And you and I've had this conversation before. I will sit down and watch newscasts that I totally disagree with, because I find it important to see other points of
differing
view.
opinion.
I don't want. I read the Wall Street Journal, which outside of I don't understand all the math stuff. You can explain that. You can draw me pictures of that stuff, but I want to. I don't think you can grow intellectually, and that's part of our problem in society. Is people are stagnant. They stay in their echo chamber, and that's why I love arguing with you. It's like messing with them on the bus was like some of the, I like stimulating thought, and it's my job as a teacher. But I mean,
You also have the best subject.
I don't. How can I expect them to learn something if I'm not willing to learn myself? And there's been some things, I wouldn't let you know this, but you actually kind of changed my mind on some things.
You've changed my mind on some things as well.
So-
your sons and what I'm saying about social safety nets.
Yeah.
If you would have asked me 3 years ago, I would have been like, "The fuck, yeah, whatever. I don't care. Why do I have an obligation to somebody else's kids?"
Right.
That's how I felt 3 years ago.
Right.
In 3 years, I've changed a lot on
Yeah.
a lot of things. I do believe that we as a nation do have the abundance to take care of everybody. I do. Now, you can't take care of everybody for the same reason that you can't save every kid, because some people don't want to be saved. And you
You know
what I mean?
You're talking to a teacher, man. Hey, you try to throw lifelines at kids. I mean, you could bring his mom and dad here. They would tell you, my wife would tell you, you can basically pave the road for them, put them on a cart, and just push them all the way to the finish line. And some kids are going to be like,
You can lead a horse to water, but
Yep.
you can't make him drink.
Yeah. So I have changed from our discussions as well, but let me take a step back, because you were asking me about what I thought about NATO, and I said that it's one of the worst things that's ever been created, because it is a unified front to others. And that at that time, post Cold
okay,
War,
explain that part, because you lost
everybody not in NATO. Vladimir Putin, when Bush Jr. was president, approached Bush Jr. about joining NATO and was told no. Because I think NATO is a front to create a military-industrial complex and to always have some sort of strife, not necessarily full-blown wars, but some sort of strife to create an economy of weapons manufacturers and aeronautics and all these other things. That's why, what is our number one budget line item in our annual budget? It's defense.
Has to be.
Why does it have to be? Why do we have to spend $1 trillion a year? By the way, that number is so astronomically high. If I told an entrepreneur, I'll give you $100 billion, what they could do with that sort of capital. We spend $1 trillion a year, every year.
Okay, I know a little bit about this because I have
Go
a
ahead.
lot of friends in military. You're talking Air Force, you're talking Navy.
I'm talking about the
I-
Department of
no,
Defense budget annually.
I understand that. Most of what that budget is going to is maintenance on existing stuff.
Okay.
And here's the thing, and we are learning this now with the Ukraine war, because the stuff that the planes that are being so successful over in Ukraine right now, the F-15 Eagle came out in 1976.
Yeah. I would also make the argument that like the nature of war is changing, because you can have $100 drone.
Oh, those
the drones that
$5 drones
Yeah.
that was
Can I add a
whatever
little
side you were,
context to this?
that was amazing.
Yeah, can I add a little context to this? So there was like this undercover operation that Ukraine essentially like pulled one of over on Russia, where they brought in trucks. A Russian
They
military,
opened up and they just
the Russian military brought in Ukraine trucks and
$10
basically
drones.
parked it, and they had these like a bunch of slew of drones come out and bomb these, or essentially blow up and disable these, bomber airplanes that were like anywhere between $80 million and $100 million each, with $100 drones on a high end, right? I guess what I'm trying to say is, even if that's maintenance for what? What have we done being the police of the world? What has that given us? Has it better served America? I think
well,
NATO.
okay, I'll agree with you. Like,
We're $38 trillion in
it-
debt because we're paying everybody else's security bills. If you told me that we spend $1 trillion on Department of Defense, but that $1 trillion, if any of our efforts were spent in another country, in another province, that we would tax them, I'd be fine for that.
I'm not.
But that's not what happens.
I'm not saying you're wrong because on some of this, because some of the ideas are outdated. Japan, Germany have very little military. Why? Because
Us, U.S.
Well, no.
Germany for sure.
Germany started 2 world wars. We're not letting you have those toys again.
Brother, that
No,
is...
no. I'm saying when it started.
Okay.
And
Okay.
Japan, you got too close to us.
Yeah.
And you
We
made us a
unleashed the
little
sun
nervous.
twice on you.
Yeah, we didn't even give you twice. You're stopping you at one.
No, there were 2 bombs dropped.
No, I'm saying they started the war against us.
Forgive me.
And they got too close to home. Well, they did get to home.
Yeah,
I mean, there were plans to get to the California coast.
Yeah.
So I'm saying we wigged out, said, okay, we'll take care of this for you. Now, could we slowly, and once we brought them into the world economy, integrated them back in and cut off a lot of our bills? Yes, I will agree with you on that.
To bring up World War II, though, I think is kind of like a fanciful argument, if I may be honest, because that was almost a century
no matter what
away.
argument no matter what argument, I found this out when I went to Israel. What we think is important, because we are a young nation of about 250 years old, right? We talk about things, well, this is important, this. And when I was in Israel, had this old Palestinian man, he said, America suffers from youth. You haven't been around that long. He says, like here, people have been angry at each other for thousands of years. Sometimes it's kind of like Hatfields and McCoy. They don't even know why. You can't ever discount history because everything plays. Because here's the thing. You go back to Europe. Because I just taught this in the spring. This is in my mind. The fall of Napoleonic Europe, Metternich coming back and taking over, all of the things that set up that, and then we're talking early 1800s, right? Totally sets up World War I and World War II.
No, forgive me, Tim. I understand. I want to make sure I say this properly. I do believe that if you don't understand your history, you are doomed to repeat it. And I do understand that Europe has existed for much longer than America, and some of their strife cuts deep, especially the Middle East, right? Like that's when you want to talk about
That one ain't ever getting fixed.
right. Well,
Well, outside of nukes.
yeah. I mean, someone's got to die at this point, right? No, that's not what I said out loud. What I am saying, though, is
There goes our likes.
one of the things that really impressed me about George Washington was not only that he was the first president, was not only that he had the hubris about him to not be a monarch, but also the intelligence to not get involved with the France Revolutionary War. Because he understood that in America, as nascent and as vulnerable as it was, did not have the strength, nor does it have the output capabilities to get involved with outside bullshit.
Well, okay.
And France, without France, maybe you would agree with me, without the help of the French, America would have never survived this Revolutionary War. So imagine that. France helps us. I mean, it's the later half of the war, but still helped us in our Revolutionary War. And then George Washington
you
still
can
had
make
the
arguments
wisdom.
either way. I would say it would have depended on the American spirit, because
I'm just saying, if George Washington came back today and we were to like, speed him up on the year of our Lord 2025, and we were to explain to him how much we've stretched our military, our influence through soft power and hard power, at what point do we start to become the bad people?
Well, see, I would disagree with your premise on George Washington. George
Okay.
Washington wanted to stay out of world affairs because he knew we didn't have the strength to deal with it. And we were helped.
We don't have the strength to deal with it, Tim.
Yeah, we do.
No, we don't.
Militarily, we do.
No, we don't. Because how do we fund the military? Debt. We don't have the. This is something that I think we're going to have to start wrestling with in a very real way very shortly. Because right now, I said that our main line item in our budget was DOD. That's technically a lie. Starting next year, it's going to be interest. We're a nation in decline
I
economically.
always thought we were doing that.
What?
Interest.
What do you mean we didn't do
I mean,
interest?
that's part of the budget.
Yeah, it's going to be the lane.
Oh, you're saying it's going to exceed the defense.
Yeah, it's going to be the top line item in 2026 is going to be the interest on the debt. That's why Jerome Powell not reducing the rates, it actually does have some effect because we wanted to refinance some of that debt for a lower interest rate with the Federal Reserve, who I couldn't even explain to you, and the Fed. But anyway,
On your, I listened to your rant on Facebook the other day about the Fed.
it would have been a great 1-2 punch.
Just FYI, even if every president in my lifetime has battled with the Fed chair and never gets what they want, even if they put them in office.
Agreed. That's why I said Jerome Powell he was appointed by Donald Trump and then kept in office through Joe Biden's presidency.
Well, actually, it takes a great deal of work to get them out. They're kind of like the postmaster general.
Let me go back to my initial thought about when you said that like Washington had the wherewithal, the intelligence to understand that like America did not have the capabilities to handle all this.
Well, and how he got there, though.
Let me ask you this.
Okay.
Let me ask you this. Let's say we don't have some sort of settlement with Ukraine and Russia, and we do get involved with Iran. What are we going to do? Fight multiple wars on multiple fronts through our proxies and through ourselves? And what have we learned through history with regime change? And
unfortunately, that's
and
what
by
I'm-
the way, during the Iraq and Afghanistan war, we didn't have $37 trillion in debt. And we were talking about how Japan's about to offload $800 billion of bonds. Like, I don't think people
Oh,
understand.
no, I don't disagree. War is incredibly...
So we're not strong. Like, we're
okay.
not strong.
Well, you're approaching it from, I think we're what we are defining as strong.
What do you define as strength?
Well, yes, financially, we are very weak. I agree with that.
What is the main precursor to whether you're strong militarily or not? Two things. Manufacturing capabilities, which we don't have,
No,
and economics,
You're not
which
wrong there.
are on the downtrend. So how can we be strong as Americans if we don't have the manufacturing to fight wars and we lose our
unfortunately-
economic supremacy?
Well, that is one of the things we still do manufacture in this
we
country.
manufacture a couple of things like bombs and
No, almost all of that technology is done in the States.
yeah, but the technology, okay.
No, I'm saying
synthesizing a thing and building it. I want to be very careful how much I say because I have friends in positions, both private and public sector. I'm telling you right now, the same problems that we have with. I'll give you a prime.
Oh,
example.
no, I don't disagree
I'll give
with
you a prime example. Taiwan and semiconductors. China decides to invade tomorrow, let's say, because we are battling the LA riots internally. We have money going to Ukraine in a proxy war with another major superpower. And then we're also getting involved in the Middle East for the third time or fourth time in my lifetime. How? At what
you don't
point?
have to. You don't have to talk to me about the war in Iraq being wrong.
I'm just saying, like,
I understand.
I think Americans think that we can do everything. And I'm desperately trying to articulate that we have to live in reality.
Oh, don't you?
And no, we can't.
The Middle East wars that we have fought.
It bankrupted us.
I mean,
We're
the
37 trillion.
irony is it cost him his presidency. It's one of the things that cost him his presidency. But H.W. Bush,
Yeah, Bush Sr.
when he got in and got out, looks like a genius now, doesn't he?
Yeah. Regime change is not easy. Battling world superpowers is not easy.
Let them deal with it.
It goes back to the original thought I had
Well,
about your...
and that's where foreign policy regime change is. I mean, of all our regime changes,
None of them have worked.
Germany and Japan.
Fair. Okay, let me.
One of the few things I'll give Douglas MacArthur.
Let me give a caveat then. Is none of them have worked in my lifetime.
Oh,
What happened with Iraq? What happened with Syria? What happened with Afghanistan? When you flee a nation you tear into with war, and the second you leave, the terrorist groups that you've been fighting for the better part of a decade overtake it in less than a day. That's an extreme failure.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not like I'm saying the U.S. military is like inept or anything like that. I think the U.S. military is the greatest force for killing bad guys that has
and that's
ever
why
existed.
that's what I was misunderstanding you saying earlier, because there's nobody can stand against us militarily, but you're approaching it from the financial part, and I understand what you're saying now.
How did medieval times castle sieges work? A lot of times, what would they do? Out-resource. They wouldn't even worry about like breaching the gates or anything. They would starve the opposing people. They would say they can't
Siege.
survive through a siege. They can't survive the winter. That's what I'm saying is going to happen now. We are not in a position to fight a long-term war. So like if they can go into Iran and do the bunker the bunker buster bombs and, and all this other stuff, and then they can execute. I told Tony this. I said the difference between a genius and an idiot is success. So like if they can go in this and knock it out in 10 days, and maybe we're all like not privy to the information in the Pentagon and the CIA and the FBI and all the Department of Defenses and whatever. Okay, cool. Then prove me wrong, please. But if you do get this wrong, at this point in American history, now, we are not in a strong place. And I often have this conversation with people who are left-leaning, and their main caveat or their main response is like, well, we wouldn't be in this position if we just taxed people their fair share, right? Which, I got to be honest with you, there's nothing that irritates me more than when people talk about taxation, because if I showed you how much I got taxed last year, it's more than most people make, right? So I pay my fair share, and I don't feel bad about it.
Well, it's not you, it's the people above you that...
Well, they pay more than me. The vast majority of Americans are a deficit to a nation because they will get more from the government than they ever pay into it.
Oh, that's
right.
You're not wrong.
So we're talking about, like, whenever we say like they pay their fair share, no, they already are. You have to do a cognitive check of like, at what point are we taxing people too much and eliminating growth patterns or growth opportunities from the economy? The reason why we can tax as much as we do is because we have as much economic growth.
What's your definition of what you want your government to do?
Exactly. And this is what I want my government to do. I want to stop bombing brown people halfway across the world. If Israel has a problem with them, then take care of that yourself. We already fund you. We already arm you. Take care of it yourself. I don't want America getting involved. Gorbachev, I want to be careful how far back in history I go, because I want to remain in current events. But there have been a series of events where were done incorrectly to lead us to the proxy war that America has with Russia through Ukraine. That at this point I don't know if can be solved without some sort of territorial disputes or what have you, right?
But you got to look at Putin too, because I wish I could find this clip. I watched him in a interview. And what pisses me off about him, first of all, he's very fluent in English. He just won't speak it because he wants to put
I think he's very smart.
Oh, well, cold-blooded, I'll give you.
How can you be cold-blooded if you're not smart?
Actually, I think he's a sociopath.
How can you be that position? I hate it when people say like you can't.
Well,
do I look up to Putin? No, but do I also think he's probably one of him and Bibi Netanyahu might be one of the two best political minds in my lifetime, because they have both held on to power far longer than they should have.
Well, that's why Bibi Netanyahu keeps starting wars, because he knows as soon as us, he's gone, he's done.
Yeah, I think he's going to get prosecuted for war crimes when all is said and done.
But
same thing with Putin.
That's why he won't leave the country.
Yeah.
Actually, he doesn't even leave the Kremlin anymore.
Well, that's what happens when you isolate
There
yourself
is a video. I watched a video. He was being interviewed, and on the back of his desk there was a black and white picture. And because I've read more books on Stalin than people have ever even seen in a library, I saw a picture of Joseph Stalin, and you got to understand where he comes from. That is his goal. That's what I want to be. He wants to return to what they had and their status. And I don't have a problem with taking this out before he gets there because it's going to be, he plans on keeping Ukraine. He plans on, he wants Finland back. He wants all of the Baltics. I mean, all of those. He wants.
can't though.
He can't.
A lot of those countries are now in NATO.
And you talk about the problem we're in. They're us on steroids because, one, he's losing the oligarchs because they don't need him anymore. And I don't even know if you know how this all started. Do you know how he got into power in the first place?
I know that he was basically tapped.
By Boris Yeltsin.
Yeah.
And he sold off all the government companies. He sold them for pennies on the dollars to his friends.
And created the aristocracy class that backed him.
That backed him. But now they're more powerful than he is, business-wise, and he's dependent upon. It's not. He's not a Joseph Stalin where everybody fears him. He's because when what was the guy's name that tried to take him out with his own little forces?
Wagner Group.
Yeah.
Wagner.
Yeah.
Wagner.
And then the leader.
They don't have a W.
Yeah.
They died in a plane crash.
And then no, not a plane crash. It exploded.
Yeah.
They didn't even hide it.
He never does. But he's not but he wants it, and that scares me. So I don't have a problem checking it. Now, if the easiest thing for me, I would have said, and it would have been easier to let them Ukraine into NATO, but that means we're into war. So that's why
You can't let Ukraine in NATO.
You can't let them in as long as Putin's there.
No, you can't let them ever.
Why?
Because then you'll have NATO be a neighbor state to Russia.
We already are.
Not really. No,
Finland's
we're not.
in.
Yeah, but that's like a small portion, and the argument could be made that like that. I would make the argument that one of the dumbest things that
All
Biden,
the Baltics are.
no, but the dumbest thing that Biden did in his presidency was extend NATO to those states, to those countries. Forgive me, Finland and
Norway. Not Norway, Sweden.
no, Sweden. Thank you. Extending them to those two additional countries. I want to be careful how I say this because I don't want to seem like a Putin apologist or like I like Russia. Like I said, there's nowhere else I would rather live than America. I feel like our foreign policy has put us in a position where conflict is inevitable. Like I said, Putin, when he first got tapped and met with George Bush Jr., asked explicitly, "We want to join NATO." And Bush said that I can't let that happen. Why? Why not have China?
Well, the same reason they originally didn't let Ukraine in. The corruption, and they were not sure that they would.
This is where you lose me with that, with corruption and stuff like that. Because
Oh no! No.
let me
back up and tell you.
let me pull the curtain back, guys. Think about how America works. You legalized it. Citizens United.
Any government, once you have more than two people running it, you're corruption.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Now, is Ukraine corrupt? Yeah. Is Russia corrupt? Yeah. Is the state of Missouri corrupt? Go down to St. Louis. Your mayor's corrupt.
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
Okay, but working counterproductively to
The interests of their nation?
they would use the protection of NATO to do things that would be counterintuitive to NATO. Does that make sense?
No.
They could he basically it was obvious that he wanted back the satellites at that point.
Let me ask you this: do you think the decisions?
I'm just telling you history.
Yeah.
I'm
Let me ask you this: do you think the
And
decisions?
don't make me a defender of George W. Bush because
I guess
I'll break out in hives right here.
I'm trying to go back to the original comment about your children.
Big fan of. I voted for Poppy, his dad.
Really?
Oh, loved him.
I would have voted for Ron Paul at the time when he was running, but I was too young. I'd vote for Rand Paul if he ever ran.
No, that wasn't. No, Ron Paul was later.
Ron Paul's the dad. Rand Paul's the son.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying Ron Paul didn't run against.
No.
Bush
When he
won.
did run, he would have.
That was
I was just too little.
the Texas guy.
But
Ross Perot.
Oh yeah, Ross. Yeah,
Ross
Bush
from Boss.
Senior doesn't
Ross
say
from-
his name or didn't say his name. Forgive me. Rest in peace.
And Bill Clinton said, "I love you."
Yeah, right. Got me over the finish line. I want to take this back to the original comment we were talking about for your children, where I want there to be those safety nets. I want.
Oh,
there to
no,
be taken. So like, all I'm saying is, do we need $1 trillion to kill people?
But I really like the
Can I tell you what I want to do with this podcast?
Mm-hmm.
I want to get to the point where I can bring on people that I can just learn from, or people that will have.
I'm trying to teach you guys. You won't listen. I should have given up on that when you were in seventh grade.
The reason we had to take a break was my producer needed to go to the bathroom, and then we're in the bathroom, and this 18-year-old goes to a history teacher and is like, "Coach, I just wanted to let you know
I love
you are so wrong on Ukraine."
Well, he told me he loved me first. But
Let me ask you that actually. What do you think of like teaching history? Do you think it's like maybe the best subject? Why did you get into
I
history?
okay.
Or
Well,
civics. Sorry, I think it's called civics.
honest, as far as teaching, originally I was in college to become a PE teacher because I wanted to coach. And when I started teaching, when I was going to, unlike today where we can't find enough teachers to fill positions, because since COVID it's been wacky, and I guess we'll get to that later. But people died in PE jobs. Like they were like Coach Ford, they were there forever.
Yeah.
They became an institution. Matter of fact, the first PE job that came open in my career at Afton was when Boehm stepped down and became the AD, because he came in as a teacher aide, and then they kind of made hours for him, and then they never really advertised the job.
I remember Boehm, I think, became like a teacher like when like he was very nascent as a teacher when I was in high school. So he's been doing the job now for almost he should be on like 20 years himself, right? Or close to it.
Yeah, I didn't teach him, but he went through school.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy, but no, it's. I totally lost the question you gave me before.
Why civics? Why history?
Oh, started I just wanted to be a
PE
coach
teacher.
because everybody who had molded my life had been outside of my parents and my church had been molded my life had been a coach. I mean, I was incredibly lucky. John Pacina, who was my dad's defense
That's a
coordinator.
throwback.
Uh,
Is he still alive?
Yes.
I want to have him on the podcast.
Oh yeah,
Do you have his number?
yeah, I can get to it.
If you don't mind.
Yeah. And boy, you'll better
That's
have a
an
lot,
episode.
Better have a lot of tape that day.
Are you kidding me? I'm gonna have 3 whiskeys.
Yeah. Well, he'll take that whiskey too. No, just great man. Ray Cliff, who is my father, who Devon Ford was one of the coaches my dad brought into the stable. I mean, Mickey Stewart, my wrestling coach. I got all excited about when we were down at St. Jen, who unfortunately has dementia now. And people who
Shaped you.
I would lay down in front of a bus for. I mean, I just made me the man. I don't like to curse, especially on tape, because my wife will watch this. But
Hi.
no, I had a high school coach, my offensive line coach, Ray Cliff, who, if anybody would call me some of the things that he called me, I would have fought them. But when he called you, probably one of the most male degrading, question your sexuality terms.
Brother, I'm an internet baby. I've heard them all.
It was a term of endearment from him. You actually took it as I'm like, I've arrived.
I call him and I'm like, hey, gay boy. And he's like, hi. Hi, Ariel.
He has 2 words and yeah, you got it.
God bless.
Yep. Oh, that man could. Oh.
So,
But no, I wanted to be a PE teacher, and there was no way. And I wanted to stay in Afton.
okay. Why? Out of
Oh
curiosity.
well,
roots?
the real funny thing is, when I was in college to go, Miss Salvera, who was the principal at Gotch, you may have had her, Pam Salvera. She
if I did,
when I was working summer
I'm
maintenance,
so sorry.
when
ma'am.
I worked at her, she's dead. So.
Oh, rest in peace, ma'am.
She told me because there were no men in the elementaries. She said, if you get certified in elementary ed, I guarantee you a job. And that's when teaching jobs were hard. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to do
Is
this.
high school not elementary? What is high school then? Secondary?
Secondary.
Okay, sorry. Forgive me.
And so I was going to go get, and my dad's like, wisely said, why don't you sub in elementary a little bit before you do that? Because I had nephews. I babysat them. I'm like, okay, I can do this. If you've ever seen the movie Kindergarten Cop,
That was you.
I subbed 1/2 day in kindergarten. And what Arnold Schwarzenegger had was a good day compared to what I had. I had 2 kids wet their pants. I didn't think, when, you want little kids to be quiet, you go over and turn the light switches on and off. And I screamed, shut up and sit down. Half of them started crying. I'm just like, I could not get out of there. I could have getting out of that building, I could have beat Usain Bolt. I was like.
Not to interrupt, I have to learn how to discipline differently because of my daughter.
Oh, yeah.
I can't raise my voice.
Yeah.
Because then she'll just start crying. So I'm like, oh no, I have to so I resonate with this.
Oh, yeah.
So elementary was not your cup of tea.
And the funny thing is that when I first got to Rogers, they kept trying to put me in 6th grade, which was like,
Is middle school primary? So it's like elementary, primary, secondary?
Okay.
Sorry.
When I got my certification, I'm social studies. I was 7 through 12.
Okay.
I was actually teaching 6th grade when I wasn't supposed to be. I had to go and get an additional certification. You get now. I think they're even more specific. It used to be like you got a K through 6. Now I think it's like K2, 3 through 6 or something like that. Middle school, and then high school. And they break it down. But yeah, I was way back when they were still even giving out lifetime certificates, which I think they're back to doing anyway. But and then I thought, okay, I'm fairly decent at art. Oh, I'll be an artist, art teacher. Took a couple of art history classes. I'm like,
not my cup of tea.
And no, it was, I was poor. I had to buy my own books. Those books were like, now this is back in when tuition.
Back in the day when people read books.
No, well, like $3,000 a semester for like UMSL or Mizzou. You were paying like $120, $200 for a book, and I'm like, forget that noise.
Can I tell you what I did after my very first semester at UMSL? My very first semester, I bought all the books because I was looking at my curriculum, I was looking at my papers, I was like, I need these books. Spent like $1,000 on textbooks. Once I realized that the only reason I would open them up is to get like the questions from like the questions of like the homework or whatever, I proceeded to the next 7 semesters not buy the books unless I needed to buy them for whatever reason.
Oh.
And then if we were buying the textbooks only for some questions, I would get the questions from like the person to my left or to my right that bought the books because I was also broke. So if I could save like 100 or 200, dude, I lived off FAFSA.
Yeah.
Like UMSL was a certain amount of money a year. I had Bright Flight for my ACT score. I had some scholarships, and then because my parents made like zero money, we were broke until I was poor until I wasn't. You know what I mean? I got like a bunch of money from FAFSA, and like the delta between school and stuff was like maybe $1,500 a semester. And boy, did I make that last. That $1,500, I was like, okay, and I worked, so like that helped too. But like, I lived off that money, you know what I mean? And if I could save a nickel, if I could not spend $1 here, I lived on QT hot dogs and not buying textbooks. That's how I got through college.
Well, I pretty much did the same thing.
Same thing, yeah.
I mean, if it wasn't in my major,
not important.
and the funny thing is, the books I didn't buy at all, my education books.
Yeah.
Because the funny thing in education, and most teachers will tell you that, and I was lucky when I got to MOBAP, I actually had some really good professors because what they did is they hired former teachers who got their doctorate and coming and were going to teach college. You actually learn from them. Unfortunately, in education, a lot of the people like at UMSL and places like that, and I don't want to disparage because they might have some wonderful people that work there, but the ones I ran into, you get these people who couldn't cut it in the high schools, and they're going to sit there and tell you how to teach when they don't have a clue. And I got in a lot of trouble because I had 2 parents that were master teachers. Don't tell me this isn't going to work when I've seen it and done it, and I've already been subbing.
You're teaching theory. I've seen application.
Yeah, when I got to MOBAP, I remember this guy, Dr. Harrington. Unfortunately, I think the man has passed away, but this guy had worked at Hazelwood when Hazelwood was before Hayeswood East and Hayeswood West, when it was Hayeswood.
Like just a super school.
And this was like in the midst of the baby boom. This is in the 70s, where they've gotten so big and they didn't have the other two buildings built. They had to run Hayeswood AM and PM.
Oh wow.
They had, and this dude had done everything. He taught, he was a guidance counselor. If he worked in the PM, so they had him coming in driving the bus, picking up kids in the morning. He ended up being an administrator. I mean, this dude's perspective ended up being a board member, and dude was just had wealth of knowledge, and that I could respect. I always got in a lot of trouble in my education classes because I'm like, you're full of crap. That's not going to work in the
Doesn't
classroom.
work, yeah.
Yeah, and
Well, dude, I got in trouble too when I was in college. Like, I just didn't agree with like. It's not that I didn't agree with what was being taught to me. I just always ran into this issue of like, this is useless for me.
right.
This whole class is useless for me. I'm taking a psych or so class, and the caveat is I did learn things from them that I do subconsciously use in my life. The problem is the delta of like what it cost me. It's like if you're going to charge me, maybe you'll agree with me, maybe you won't. I think that all degrees should be associate's degrees. Like 2 years, teach me education, and if I want to go get an undergrad and get that extracurriculars,
It's
fine.
it's the liberal arts mentality, and the state schools have bought
The
into
only
it.
class I took in university that
I'm not saying I disagree with you, but
the only class I took in university that had nothing to do with my career, but I genuinely enjoyed was U.S. history. I was like, oh, this is so much fun. I had fun in U.S. history. I was looking forward to that class. I had a great professor, and shout out to Dr. Locke, who ran the Student Investment Trust at UMSL. He made me fall in love with the market and finance. He didn't teach me to fall in love with greed. He taught me how to fall in love with
the
finance.
guy that made me fall in love with politics was Lance T. Lelou. He used to be the chair up at UMSL. I took it as a summer class. No, I transferred so many times. I mean, when I got to my MOBAP, my GPA actually went up because I had all the schools that had on my transcript. This is back when, before electronic stuff, you had
Paper.
and the lady goes, "What are all these?" I said, "Oh, that's all the stuff that people didn't take." She just ripped it off and threw it away. My GPA, all my withdrawal passes, all my shot through my
bless.
GPA.
Thank you, that lady.
I love that lady. But I transferred so many times. I took basic psych and basic government like 5 times through all my transfers. And it was funny because when I got, was it at Lindenwood? Or no, was it MOBAP? I forget what it was. I used to keep your course catalog of what you had at another school. So if you could prove it was similar, you didn't have to take it again. Well, the course description, each one was exactly the same. The textbook was exactly the same. And it was at Lindenwood. And this lady said, well, we don't think you got the essence. She's giving me all these reasons why I had to take it again. She said, we don't think you had the essence of what the author was teaching. I said, funny you should say that, because I had the author in a summer class. And I said, just admit to me that you want me to pay for it.
Yeah, you
again.
just want me to pay for this. It's a business.
And I swear, she looked around.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm down with that. But I mean, now I will say, a lot of people diss the liberal arts. You say that going back to your associate's degree point, and I would concur. I think one, we have these kids accruing. I'm so glad that he's got a scholarship going in because they accrue so much. And my thank goodness my in-laws were paid a lot for Nick's college, what he didn't get in scholarship. They were wonderful. So we didn't accrue much debt.
It's also crazy.
But if they could crank it out in 2 years,
It's listen, if you told me the reason why I'm against college being free is because I know how much of a business it is.
oh, I don't disagree.
So if you were to say like, well, university should be free, agreed. Like we should invest in education as a country. I agree with you there. The problem is you can't do it for-profit universities. Like elementary, primary, secondary is like within the bounds of public education.
oh no, yeah, I don't.
If you wanted to
I don't
tack
disagree. They throw stuff in there
Well-
that you shouldn't have to take.
Let me ask you this and see where you land. So like I'm a conservative. I voted DJT. Tax me less, right? But if you told me we're going to tax you 1% more, and what we're going to do is fundamentally change education, and I am going to kind of change the topic here because we do. This is the first guest I've ever had where I feel like we're pressed for time. I want to touch a lot of topics. if you told me, Ariane, we're going to increase your taxes 1%, but what we're going to do is fundamentally rework education to where it's not K through
Good
12.
luck.
It's not K through 12. It's K through 14.
Oh,
but the last 2 years.
I'm down with that because I had 2 foreign exchange students on my track team this year that I was talking to them about, and they are going back for year 13. I thought they were seniors. They go, oh no, we got more. They basically, when you're done, you're already a junior in college.
Yeah.
Therefore, you're not paying that much, and it's taken care of depending on what you do.
Well, I would even say that high school needs to be reworked. But
No,
what
I
I'm
don't
saying is the
disagree there
last 2
either.
years, 13 and 14, need to be like associate's degree level curriculum to prepare you for work, to prepare you for life. It's so crazy to me how the high school education used to be enough to facilitate the middle class lifestyle. Right now, there is a delta between where we believe people to be publicly educated and how to survive in today's world.
I don't disagree, and it happened.
But I don't think
Shortly
the
after
answer.
I
But I
got
don't
out-
think the
shortly
answer
after I got
is
out of high
making
school.
college free.
No,
I
I
don't think
don't-
that's the answer.
Well, I think there should be a cost. What that cost is, be it financial or
Let me take a step
that
back.
make sense?
No, I agree, but let me take a step back just to really make my position clear. If your position is college as we have education should be free, I could not disagree more. But if you told me that you wanted to rework public, what do they call it? STLCC, what is that called? St. Louis Community Colleges. If you wanted to rework community colleges to where it wasn't necessarily like elective, but we made it a part of technically education after 16 is
that is one of
elective,
the best things that has happened in the last few years.
is expansion in community colleges.
We had a young lady that wrestled for us this last season, but the year ago. Remember, graduated at semester, and then she was taking classes at community college. She was getting she could still stay in high school sports, and was also.
What is that program called?
Early college.
Early college. I love that shit. But let me ask you this. If we've established that this is a value add, why is this not the norm? Let me ask a broader question. Do you believe that a high school education in the year of our Lord 2025 is enough to generate someone enough skill set to live the middle class lifestyle?
I will tell you one of the most amazing people that I ever worked with is Miss Mary Genta. Mrs. Mary Genta. There's only one of her.
Okay.
She tries to tell these people, and I tell these kids all the time at Afton High School, she is my hero. She got my kid so much scholarship money.
God bless.
I genuflect every time I hear her name. But there's only one of her, and a lot of kids just don't listen. You can bring the horse to water. The information's out there.
Yeah, okay, but let me take a step back. It's not as if
But on the other, and I would get this before I forget because I'm going to forget. On the other end of that, when I was in high school, Afton had 3 different kinds of diplomas.
wow, I didn't know that.
They had the general diploma. You graduated high school. They had the academic one, like you're going to take a little bit more difficult classes, and then they had the college prep. What this one was saying, the general one, is there's still good real blue collar jobs, and you're going to go out and get them.
HVAC, construction, police officer,
Which
fireman.
after I graduated,
Which, by the way, can I say, is there's
oh
a reason why the trades are booming right now, and it's because there's a market for it.
yeah, but
And I also consider
will
the
tell you
trades a
that
higher
education got its head up its butt in the early 2000s, late 90s, that everybody should go to college. Everybody's not made for college.
I disagree. I think everyone is made for higher education, but you have to be honest with them. And we've pushed arts because when I was in...
Oh, I'm not okay. I'm not saying,
Sorry.
but I'm saying we have totally disregarded the trades.
Agreed.
And I'm telling
Agreed.
you, there are plumbers who make 3 times more than I make.
Brother, I know a guy with a high school education, started an HVAC company. Now he was making like $670,000 a year.
Oh, you asked me why I wanted to go into education. Do you know that wasn't my first plan?
Male
When I was a
stripper, first plan.
you
got the frame for it.
when I was in high school, from the neck up. When I was in high school, I took every shop class we had. Half the people in Afton did not go to tech because the industrial arts program was so good at Afton.
Wow.
And they gutted it. And it just breaks my heart because when I was in high school, I had a bunch of things I wanted to do. I was really loving architecture, and I really loved welding. I was in competitions on arc welding. I had like one competitions with what I could do. Unfortunately, I found out that there was a lot of math that went with both those two, and that
Funny how that works.
yeah, I didn't know my wife yet. So.
She's a math teacher,
Yeah,
right?
for you guys.
Oh man, doing the Lord's work. I
Yeah.
told Ryan.
She's
Keith the
actually
same thing.
how I got out of college.
Okay.
Had I not met my wife, I probably would have never, because when I transferred to MOBAP, I had to take a class. It was this probability, and
Statistics.
she said it was way harder than what they should have put me in. And basically, by the end of the class, she would come up. I was the Barney Fife night security guard up at MOBAP. That was my work study. She would come up and tutor me. Other people who were math majors were coming in because this woman, she was a sweet woman, but she was like this really high level. They'd pulled her in for a summer class, and she was not teaching down to level. And I mean, we're here, and I'm like in the basement somewhere. And I mean, my wife got me through it because we were going to get married.
She's like, I'm tired of this
Well,
guy.
no, she told me, she says, we are not getting married unless you have a college degree and a job.
That's exactly what Bruna told me.
Yep.
That's exactly
Which
what
was
Bruna told me.
motivation on my part.
Well, I had both, but she let me know that her ex at the time, the reason they broke up, because they were actually in a very healthy relationship, was because he didn't want to better himself and all
Right.
these other things. And then,
But all these people were asking her for help. And she's like, just look at the notes. I almost broke up with my wife, though, because I never took school seriously. The first time I studied for a test, I'm like senior in college, and by senior, I mean, I've been in there for 7.5 years. She goes, well, where are your notes for math? I said, who takes notes in math class? She about had an aneurysm. I said, it's in the book.
so can I say something though? I feel like I'm about to make an argument that you've just strengthened, and that is, and it's the same thing that I said to Ryan. I am a product of public education, and that is not lost on me. And so is my wife, who crushes it as well. But one of the things that I do think is that education has failed a generation of kids, and thankfully his generation now sees that failure, so they can kind of navigate those waters more accordingly. The liberal arts were pushed on my generation because what was pushed on my generation was a degree, regardless of what that degree was in. When I was in high school, when I was graduating, there were two people.
See, you think what you had was liberal arts. I was in the 70s. You want to talk about liberal arts.
No, forgive me. Not necessarily liberal arts, but like the arts. Like you could get a degree in some useless shit, and then you have $100,000 of student loan debt and no job opportunities. One of the things about a sociology and a psychology major that we laughed at was in psychology, you're going to pay for the same degree that I'm going to get, but the only two jobs in psychology are either you teach psychology or you write a book in psychology. That's it. Because unless you get your medical doctorate, you can't be a psychologist. So psychology,
yeah, you'd have to get your master's to at least be a counselor.
Okay, but then you're what, $100,000, and that's the thing is like the return on the ROI, the return on an investment of your time and your effort. There's a gentleman that graduated from Afton, became a welder, was making $80,000 a year when he was 20. When I was 20, I was in $20,000 of debt.
That's what two guys I graduated with. Back to me being welder. Two guys I went to high school with, graduated with, became underwater welders before, when you had to go down there and dive, they would work 2-3 months out of the year and made more in their first 5 years of welding than I probably will make in my career.
If you told me you wanted to take $100 billion off the Department of Defense budget and add it to an education budget and rework education, by the way, to be completely honest with you, I don't like the Department of Education. You and I have had discussions about this.
I don't like it either, but
I like the social benefits of it. I just don't like its structure and how it kind of like waves a magic wand over all the states. But I guess what I am trying to say is...
Well, okay. And you brought this point, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about this. One of the things you got to understand in education, that you do this as a teacher and you do it at the macro level, I guess, with the Department of Education. You know you're going to have failure. Now, everybody bitches and moans about our literacy rate, this, that, and the other. Here's the thing, and I talked to one of my German students last year about this. He's like, this is so much easier than it would be. And I said, look around you. I said, how many of these kids would not be in your classroom in Germany?
What is your point when you say that?
And I will say this, and I can say this because I have special needs children. I'm not. We made a decision a long time ago. It's a Jeffersonian idea, which I totally agree with. I don't agree much with Thomas Jefferson, but we were going to educate everybody.
I agree with that.
Now, the problem with that is this. The great thing is that we educate everybody. The problem is that we educate everybody. Does that make sense?
It does, because
here's the thing. When you get to high school in Germany, there have already been 2 cuts along the way. If you're not achieving at a certain level in European schools,
blue collar work,
here's the janitor mode for you. Okay, the most you can be is this. Most you can be is this. You are competing to stay in. Now, I agree with the idea of offering everybody the education, but if you don't want it, I don't think when these schools, because of the federal, and I'm agreeing with you on the Department of Education, these schools will lie about. There's been a principal who got there before came up to the high school, who you don't care for.
Sujo?
Yeah.
Oh!
Who basically was changing.
I can say this.
Changing grades.
This is my opinion. This in no way, shape, or form reflects on the guest, Tim Hill. One of the worst people I've ever met in my life.
I agree with you.
One of the worst people I've
Never
ever
worked
met
for
in
him.
my
The
life.
woman gave me anxiety. And
Yeah,
I don't get anxiety.
I cannot explain to you how much she directly shaped me in a negative way.
Right.
And, by the way, I knew her son, drug addict. Go figure.
But here's the thing.
Sorry, Sujo.
The Department of Education says, okay, well, everybody has to go to college. Everybody has to succeed. Not everybody's life is not everybody succeeding. There are failures. You have to say, okay, if you fail, you fail.
Can I add a caveat to that, though? You said that when you graduated high school, there was like 3 levels of it. I'll tell you what I think is wrong, and perhaps you could tell me if I'm ignorant or not.
Okay.
The problem is that we told people that higher education was exclusively meant for universities, and that no matter what degree you got, that was quote unquote some accolade, right? The truth of the matter is that there are different strokes for different folks. People have different affinities, different strengths, and that we never gave the same wand of approval for everything else. The reason I say that my generation was a generation of people that were lied to is, and forgive me for saying this, I don't mean this as an insult. I had people making $55,000 a year telling me that if I didn't take $100,000 of debt, that I wouldn't make $60,000 a year.
Well, I don't well, that going back to the trades, what we're talking about, you could go to Rankin Tech or do an apprenticeship and make more money than I'm ever going to see.
But it's not even about just strictly blue collar work. So a little caveat. I wanted to become a math teacher. Mm-hmm. The reason I didn't become a math teacher, a myriad of issues, but one of them was because math teachers made a certain amount of money. And I said this to Ryan Keith, I'm sorry, I wanted to do the same thing you did. But I looked at the return on investment. I said, I'm not going to put myself in $60,000, $50,000, $40,000 of debt and then make $50,000 a year. I'm just not. And it goes to and
I would also say it's a calling. I think you understand that now that they're coaching.
I don't think anyone should put themselves in $50,000 of debt if the job they get makes $60,000 a year. I do think that should be paid for with my tax dollars because I think teachers are important. I think education is broken, and I have yet to receive an argument that makes any fucking sense, Tim.
Oh,
and
no.
I don't mean this as like I hate education. I'm a product of public education, and I love this country. I think the best thing that we can do is invest in our youth. And I think education is broken because it was formed 80 years ago with a manufacturer mentality of put part A with part B. Now what we need more than ever is tangible skill sets that increase the quality of life of individuals.
No, I don't disagree with what you're saying.
And then we put too much emphasis in the arts when half the people on this.
Okay, I'm going to disagree with you there.
Well, I'll explain why. Because you can only appreciate the arts when your basic needs are met. And when you need government assistance to get your basic needs met, no offense, you don't get to appreciate the arts. Get your basic needs met. And what I'm trying to say here is I want you to be artistic. I want you to enjoy music and art and all these other things, but only when you have a tangible skill set to society.
Okay, yes.
Because we have a bunch of educated people that are useless, that are baristas at Starbucks, they hate their fucking life.
Well, but...
And they have $100,000 of slew debt
Well,
to be making my coffee because they were lied to.
they were lied to, but they also lied to themselves, I will say.
Agreed. There's always this,
Because-
you're not wrong.
Because
they had to
especially
make a
last couple
choice.
years, because, well, my generation. Let's jump back to the '80s. When I was in college, I was in the era where everybody was getting a business degree,
Holla.
and I mean, there were so many people who went broke because the '90s bust right after that, and it was insane. So I mean,
He wanted to get a business degree.
yeah.
Remember what you said to me? You said you want to go into a business administration, and what did I say to you? I go, what are you gonna do? Administer business? What the fuck does that even mean? I was like, get an actual
it's
skill
like
set.
When my son wanted to get a history degree, I said, "Son, you do understand what the most common job for a history degree is, right?
Unemployment.
Teacher.
Night manager in a hotel."
Well, I told him that. I go. You know what people do when they get generic degrees? It's because they're not like, they don't have a passion for a certain craft, and they don't have the intelligence to really find their niche. It's one or the other.
Well, and this brings.
So I attacked the arts
what
earlier,
what you're saying,
But I
by
attacked
bringing-
the arts earlier, but it goes right back into white collar work as well.
Well, and I will say this: the whole idea of liberal arts, and a lot of this is the STEAM stuff too. The reason you have those things, and maybe it falls on deaf ears most of the time, but you get that one kid who finds, or the few group of kids, and it. Let me explain. Basically, the liberal arts philosophy this way: you're sprinkling seeds. Most seeds that you plant, I mean, you sow, don't do anything. What is it? Maybe 30% of them take. Now, you're just exposing them to the thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I can say this because most of the colleges I went to were liberal arts colleges. I graduated from Missouri Baptist, and they made me take a philosophy class, which was a logic class, which was hell on earth for me because it was taught by a guy who loved Rush Limbaugh. Now, full disclosure for the people who don't know me, I am a member of a teachers union. I worked my way through college as a union projectionist, which is a job that doesn't exist anymore. My grandfather, my mom and dad were both union teachers. My dad was a union, whatever the bridge one is. My grandfather was the president of 2 labor unions in Kansas City. Very pro-union.
Yeah, but
they
you
dropped me.
have to add the context of history.
Well, but they dropped
Because
me.
unions used to be Democrat.
But I was put in this logic class, and I don't know why I have to take this class. Basically, what it was, the book he used was Rush Limbaugh's "See, I Told You So."
Oof. For his class?
Yes,
Jesus Christ.
and
Jesus Christ.
it was a small,
And you were paying for
small
this?
small senior class. I was one of. I know there was more liberals.
No
than
wonder
there
you
besides me.
transferred.
No, that's where I graduated from.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Hey, but this guy, I hated my life, and I had this guy for another class, a New Testament history. And I loved him,
Okay.
and I thought I'll just take this class because it'll be. I was like, okay, there's about 20 people in there. I was like the steak you throw into a group of pit bulls every day. They'd throw out a topic, and
You'd be the liberal in the crowd.
and I'm just like, would get my butt handed to me because if I beat this guy, this one would come out. I mean,
you're just outnumbered.
I'm just like, oh man. I thought I was going to fail this class because I told the teacher to his face, you know what you're not supposed to do in college because teachers in college are so self-centered and so tender, how wrong he was about things, everything you're told not to do. And when I was going to skip my final because it was all discussion and then the final exam,
Okay.
which was 70% of your grade. I wasn't even going to go in and take it. I'm like, dude, I failed this class. He's like, why aren't you going in there? He said, dude, you already had your A a long time ago. He said, I know there are people in there who were just too chicken to stand up. He said, you use logic to do all these things.
God bless.
And I'm like, and I knew I liked that guy. And I'm like, wow. And I'm like, and it didn't hit me how much I had learned in that class that I didn't think I needed. as human beings, we absorb from everything. We're always learning, no matter what we do. Well, most of us.
I was like a step back.
There are some.
Hopefully, we're learning from everything we do.
There are some stones that you can't, you could pour acid on.
I just want to know why the square doesn't go in the triangle hole, Tim.
Yeah, and it's like,
trying for 32 years.
But you're basically opening doors, because as I'm lucky, even though we were dirt poor, my mom stayed home until I went to school, and then 2 teacher salaries. I mean, we didn't find out till my mom's funeral that we could have gotten government assistant lunches and all that stuff, but my parents were too proud to take it.
God bless.
And we were in a financial hole for my mom staying home for the 3 kids. But my parents found it important to make sure that we understood culture. I was lucky because parents are too educated. Instead of going to plays at the Fox, we'd go to the St. Louis Repertory where tickets were $3. We'd go to not the St. Louis Symphony, but the St. Louis Philharmonic, which was a step down, but it was still the same thing. And I was exposed to things like that. But then I realized, and one of the things that, when I got to Afton, and I'm friends with kids from North St. Louis, and in the same financial situation, I saw how they didn't get exposed to that stuff, but they did get exposed to it in school. So I'll make the argument that, does a lot of it fall on deaf ears? Yes. Did you see use in it? No, but that's not to say somebody else didn't.
Very fair. But then I go back to my point of did it have to cost?
Oh no,
Amsel was $311 a credit hours when I went in.
It's most
especially today when information is so
so
prevalent.
Well, you can all go back to healthcare, because healthcare is what drives the cost of everything, because they're paying for those teachers' healthcare. That's one of the things that drives everything up, and the insurance, the insurance because everybody sues everybody now. Lawyers of the death of the Roman Empire will be the death of us.
I said this to Boris, my attorney, and Boris, I love you because he's about to be my business partner. But the one occupation that does not add any sort of GDP value to any country is law. So it is strictly a take assets from here, give to here, or subsequent this to that. It is strictly internal. It produces zero value add to a country. However, we're a highly litigious nation. I want to, because we're 2 hours and 43 minutes into this, and forgive me, because
it doesn't seem. It seems like we've been talking about 25 minutes.
I know, but I want to spend the last 15 minutes talking.
Sorry for this taking longer.
No. I wanted to spend the last couple minutes talking about something that you probably did not think that I was going to bring up, but I wanted to say something to you, and I haven't said this to you up until now. I have such a reverence. No. I have such a reverence and respect for both you and Devon. And you guys think so vastly different from me that it forces me. It's not even about the logic, okay? It's not even about your position on certain stances. My thought process is, I have my preconceived notions, and I have how I articulate and how I navigate the world. And I also have to wrestle with the fact that, I say education is broken, yet I'm a product of public education. I say that, the system is corrupt and needs to be fixed and all this other stuff, yet every dollar of wealth that I have was grown here. So I have a reverence for this nation. That's why I had to preface it that I'm a patriot and I love this country. But one of the things that I have to do whenever I'm having a conversation with you and Ford is, obviously you guys are a little bit more left-leaning than I am. And it forces me to think to myself, okay, me and Tim, we don't see eye to eye on this thing. But I respect the man. I respect what he's done. So, there has to be some sort of, there has to be something to salvage
There's a great
from
movie
this.
Quote. You don't have to agree with a man to respect him.
Well, not even that. Not even agree with him. It's about I used to think agreement was 0 or 1. It was binary. Now I am convinced that it is perspective based. So you think differently from me because of the way that there are variables in your life that have led you down to a path where you now live the life that you live. And because you had those variables, because you made those choices, you were inexcusably within my life and a role model for me, and then helped me be somebody who might see completely different from you, right? On certain things. On a lot of things I think we actually do agree. But what I'm trying to say is like, it's not about being right or wrong. It's not about like owning something. It's about respecting the fact that like I arrived here and you were a piece of that puzzle.
And that to me, I that just pisses me off. You go back, and a lot of this changed during COVID, I think. Now we were kind of on a trajectory for this anyway, but I think it just steroided it up. Why? Because we disagree, do we have to be enemies?
I'll tell you why. You're not gonna like the answer. Because disagreement used to be available as an option, now it's criminalized. Or rights are taken away. That's the problem. It used to be the case. I'll give you a prime example. COVID is the prime example. If you would have told me that the vaccine was available to us, and if you wanted to take it, cool, and if you didn't want to take it, also cool. It was your
You probably don't want
choice.
to go down this road with me because my father died because somebody didn't get vaccinated.
Okay, well, I do actually, because my uncle was like Fox News watching and then ended up dying. So my uncle, rest in peace, Frederick Stefani, he did die during COVID, right? So like, it's not, I wrestle with that. I love this topic, to be completely honest with you. You asked why, where did we lose this ability to disagree? It's because it was demonized too for 3 years.
Well, for everything you can say on the left, you can say on the right.
Agreed.
And I'm saying, we started, okay, growing up, when I was a kid, 2 Missouri senators, a Democrat and a Republican, Jack Danforth and Tom Eagleton. Politically couldn't have been more different than anything. I mean, one was, a raise your taxes, do services.
Conservative versus liberal.
Yeah.
Tale as old as time.
But 2 men that were deeply respected, but were the best of friends. And when they said, well, your enemy, he's your enemy, he says, no, that's not my enemy. He said, the other 98 senators are our enemies because we're working for the state of Missouri. When we start working for a side, and you and I have talked about this before, the personality cult, and it didn't start with Trump. I think it started with Obama.
I think it started with Bush, but continue.
Yeah.
Or Reagan.
Yeah. Actually, that's a good. He's good. Makes a
Fucking good point.
good point.
Good point.
Now, it used to be you didn't get a personality cult unless you got killed, like Kennedy or Lincoln.
Well, Reagan had an attempt on his
But
life.
when they start, and people, when I complain about all these pictures of Trump, and this idealistic, almost like
Godlike figure.
Well, or like the posters you saw in Nazi Germany. And no, I'm not calling Trump a Nazi.
No.
But the posters. And I said, I was equally against that stuff when it was Obama, because where we go wrong now, I'm for him, not for his ideas.
Agreed.
And that's where we've stopped being intellectually curious.
There's no nuance.
No, there's no, yeah. I can't, I mean, half of the people that are my dearest friends are politically polar opposite of me. My best friend is career military, is a Republican as you can get. And we are fine because he understands why I believe what I believe, and because we look at each other on a personal level. And that's what I think COVID did on steroids. We stopped talking to people and we just started.
Forgive me. I want to agree with you. However, I would be lying if I did not bring up the fact that, so I voted for Obama in 2012. Okay, it was the first election that I could vote for. My options were Mitt Romney or Obama. I voted for Obama, and I honestly, even to this day, I think I still chose the right option. Okay, I voted for Trump in 2016 because my options were Hillary or Trump. I voted for Trump in 2020 because I did not want Joe Biden, and I voted for 2024 because I didn't want Kamala Harris. Where's the caveat to this? I didn't vote for Hillary. Sorry, I voted for Trump because I didn't want to vote for Hillary, not because I wanted to vote for Trump. I voted for Trump because I didn't want to vote for Biden, not because I wanted to vote for Trump. And I voted for Trump because I didn't want to vote for Kamala, not because I wanted to vote for Trump. I bring this up for a reason. For me, I did feel like I was a Democrat or a liberal. I did for the longest of times. And then I felt like I was being actively persecuted for the way that I think. And COVID was really the eye-opening experience for me. Because I'll explain to you a little bit more like nuance. My wife got vaccinated, okay? I did not. Me and Bruna, when we first started dating, could not be, she voted for Biden, I voted for Trump. I never once said anything to her. She was like, why did you vote for Trump? I was like, I voted for Trump because this, that, or that. Why did you vote for Biden? Because I don't like Trump. Okay, I love you, baby, no matter what. You know what I mean? Over the course of time, things have changed, obviously, but I want to say this as like a point of reference. I do solemnly think that it was the Democratic Party that first ostracized and demonized me. I'll tell you why. Because I did not want to get the vaccine. And this is being someone whose uncle died from COVID. But it wasn't the fact that, like, the vaccine could have been a myriad of other vehicles. It was the fact that for the first time in my life, I was experiencing some of the things that my dad used to tell me was happening in communist Albania. The othering, the tattletaling, the whole fact that you needed a vaccine card. Papers, please, here in America. I hate to say it this way.
Okay, but again, you go back and look at history.
Go ahead.
You look during the Spanish flu epidemic. We didn't
Do we do U.S. history or world history?
U.S. history.
Okay.
It wasn't much different. There is, okay, in civil society, which you can make the argument whether we are that anymore,
I think we are.
semi.
We're not fighting for bread. We're civil.
Yeah. That's not where I was going with civil, but anyway. Okay. As a citizen, you have responsibilities. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Part of the problem is that people don't want to live up to the responsibilities, which is 90% of the problems that we have nowadays.
Okay.
Would you agree with that?
I agree with that.
You have responsibilities from what you give and what you get.
Agreed.
Now, basically what they're saying is, like, if you want to go out in public, it's more than about you.
Agreed.
Because if you go out there unprotected, one of my fears that I have, because that I may have, after I had the vaccine, may have brought home, because you could still be carriers.
Hey, you're around a lot of kids. I get
Yeah.
sick every wrestling season.
Yeah. My immunity is almost, I
You're
actually,
probably a god
when
at this
I
point.
went on a cruise and we had to take a COVID test, I had COVID and didn't even know it.
Yeah.
That I may have brought it home to my dad.
Okay.
But what they think it was, like, one of his doctors was down in Jefferson County where nobody was wearing masks, nobody was doing anything, and they're up in his face working. And what they found out was that the COVID vaccine did not work. He'd had a liver transplant, a kidney transplant, and the anti-rejection drugs
You want to take it with the organ?
countermanded the vaccine.
Vaccine. Okay.
So it was like he was unvaccinated. And he was 82 years old, and yeah. So, and again, nobody knew. I mean, because here's the thing. And I will say a lot of things on the rollout were horrible. But, again, and I just saw this, and you know I'm no defender of Bush, too. I heard this thing on the radio on the way over here talking about his library. The Bush Library is opening up, and they put you in all the situations. They call it the choices room. You go in there, and they give you all the facts that he had at each one of the things. I think they're trying to do some revisionist history.
Of course.
Because every former president tries to.
Well, hindsight is also 2020, and we have to remind ourselves
but you got to remember, in the situation at the time,
what were the variables at that time?
And then
exactly.
what we ask our president to do is to do the best with what they have at the decisions at the time.
Agreed.
And I think now, and most people forget, all the funding from all that, the vaccines, was through Trump. It's the Trump vaccine.
Operation Warp Speed.
Yeah, I mean that was, and I don't think he gets enough credit for that. And they're actually you always, there are some things that Trump has done that I actually do like.
I'm sure there is. There's things that Biden did that I liked.
He did some things to the VA that I just thought were.
I like the CHIPS Act.
I actually think that he should have done away with the VA and just give them the exact same insurance that the senators get, especially if you were in foreign wars. Because
I'm with that.
Yeah.
And if that's too expensive, then don't have so many wars.
Well, here's mine. It'd actually be less to give them the same insurance and not have the VA. Because then you don't have the administration costs.
I just think when you incentivize no wars, I'm happy. But
Wars are going to happen, but
let's not start them.
I think, and again, a lot of what people do is after the fact, when you have all the, one of the things I love doing on right before Patriots Day is I show them the news feed of 9/11 when they didn't know what had happened.
Yeah.
Because originally it was an accident. Oh, then it was this, then it was this, and then it was this. And
second plane. What the
yeah,
fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember when that second plane hit. I was sitting right between Krista Bernritter and Ray Kreitz. I was in Miss Toy's room. And I remember that like it was yesterday. And it was, because all I remember, they'd called it, we were in a team meeting, we were walking back to our classroom, and Mr. Weisflug comes running down the hall and said, go back to the room and watch. He says, there's been an accident. A plane flew into
the World Trade Center.
It's all perspective. And what's your perspective at the time? And I never fault politicians with the evidence of hindsight. Because first of all, it's a job nobody really, we used to get the best and brightest to be president. People don't want to do it because they don't want to put up with all the crap that you got to put up with anymore.
I would make the argument that the best and brightest were never the presidents.
I disagree.
Okay. Outside of the founding fathers. And the 16th.
Harry Truman
and Teddy.
Harry Roosevelt.
And FDR. Okay. The last 50 years, not the best and brightest.
As much as Richard Nixon gets a lot of bad press.
He does.
He did a lot of good things.
I agree.
Did a lot of bad things too.
What? The most popular president, yeah.
To Alex P. Keaton.
Yeah. Well, and then also was then ousted for an unelected person that was former ties with the intelligentsia, and then started.
Okay, you want to go that route?
No. Actually, guys, both of you stop. I want to go back to the comments that you were making regarding like the vaccine and stuff like that, because there was. I want to stick on this comment, and this is what I want to end this conversation with: is like this thing, because I.
Because you want to go home and see your child?
No, dude. We could do 4 hours. Actually, I really don't give a shit. So you're getting paid hourly, so. I want to go back though. You originally said something that I did agree with, where you were saying that like nuance is dying, and this ability to like have it other think or disagree, it died during COVID. My response to that is yes, it died at the hands of the Democratic Party, and I'll explain why. Trump did start Operation Warp Speed. Trump was the person that was trying to like really push for some sort of like easy fix. If you recall, near the end of his presidency, they wanted a vaccine more than anything. The Democratic Party in March of 2020, before the elections,
he wanted it until he did want it. Then he started.
He never didn't want it. Even today, Trump pushes that Operation Warp Speed was one of the best things that he did in his first presidency. Which, by the way, someone who voted for him, I disagree with vehemently. I don't think there's nuance in the Democratic Party, Tim. I think it still
okay.
exists
Let me
in
ask
the
you this.
Republican Party.
Let's back up. Do you think before your daughter goes to school, she goes to a public school, should she have to have her vaccinations?
If the vaccinations work as we perceive them to work, then my daughter not having any vaccines would only be a detriment to her. Not anybody else.
No, that's not true.
Then why do we call them vaccines?
They only work if everybody gets them.
Then why do we call them vaccines? That's a vaccine by textbook definition. I want you to Google the textbook definition of vaccine, please, because I want to make sure I'm not wrong on this one.
Okay, let me take it to
But still Google that.
Big George Washington fan, right?
Yes.
Okay. Continental Army dealing with smallpox made all of the soldiers get inoculated, which killed about 3% of them.
Yes.
Is that okay?
I think that when we're discussing the military and not the gradual, we have to separate the general populace from a military, because what is the military's sole duty. It is different from a populace.
But we're citizens.
If you told me,
we're citizen soldiers.
let me take it before you tell me. But if you told me that you said that the vaccine mandate was exclusively for the military, so that they could execute the best wishes of
Why
America,
do their rights end where yours
because
don't?
they sold their rights when they became
They
property
didn't
of
sell
the
their
U.S.
rights. They
government.
didn't give up.
They became property of the U.S. government.
What's the most important right in a democracy? Your right to
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of
and your
happiness.
vote.
Okay, yes.
Did they lose the right to vote?
No.
So why are they any less a citizen?
By that same logic, why was I forced to stay inside where no legislation was passed to force me to do so? But yet I was still penalized for it for not having a vaccine. My rights were taken away from me, Tim.
No, well,
I had the right to vote.
there are police powers that can in emergency situations.
Agreed.
In emergency situations, governments are given power.
Executive
Right or wrong,
branches.
right or wrong.
Executive branches.
Well, and it was okay. You
The governors.
but
And the president.
most of those mandates were at the state level, and you live in a Republican state.
I would make the argument that the states fell in line out of proxy fear from the federal government, and more specifically, federal funding for the various hospital needs that they needed at the time. The NIH, the CDC, was hammering down on the federal government through Anthony Fauci, and then also subsequently a lot of the funding that was coming from the federal government, specifically PPP loans, PPE loans, federal funding for various hospital needs and all these other things, because people were told to stay home. Productivity was at an all-time low. The economy took forever hit that we're still feeling to this day. By the way, I think inflation is a large part of that. People like to shit on Biden about inflation. Biden didn't start inflation. COVID did. Biden just exacerbated it.
Well, okay, I'm going to disagree with you on that one too, because you and I have talked about before. You go through, it's going to happen. Inflation's going to go up. Inflation's going to.
Yeah, but economic downturns are not like.
Oh,
you're not starting them because you're shutting down an economy.
We were already headed there, but it would steroided it up.
I disagree. I disagree wholeheartedly.
We were
The economy was booming before COVID. Economic growth was a substandard, and unemployment was already falling to the all-time low that we now appreciate today. By every metric, Trump's presidency would have been considered a success the first term had it not been for COVID. And had it not been for COVID, I guarantee you Biden wouldn't have come close to winning.
No.
It took COVID, mail-in ballots, and changing the way we lived our lives for him to squeak out 81,000 votes in 4 different states.
Okay. First of all,
Forgive me.
okay.
Sorry. I get passionate.
I understand. I understand.
This is no.
But first of all, let me.
This is like my Tucker Carlson moment.
As somebody who is a Democrat, let me explain
Yes, please.
something to you. I love when the right gives the Democrats the kind of credit that we would be organized enough to be able to do the things. And oh, hey, hang on, let me finish.
Forgive me.
I'll quote Will Rogers at you. I am not a member of an organized political party. I'm a Democrat. The house could be burning and we'd be running around inside it. Democrats are the Chicken Littles. They very little. We couldn't pull that off.
Let me take a step
No,
back.
and I know I do, and I do understand political machines. I do understand all of that stuff, but there are enough election laws set up that there'd be more evidence.
Tim, I am not in any way, shape, or form saying that the 2020 election was stolen. I'm
Okay.
not saying that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
What I'm saying
mistook
is,
that.
had it not been for COVID, it wouldn't have even been a race. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that there had to be so many variables that had to happen in succession for that race to be as close as it was.
Oh, okay. He'd been impeached, which I give you. Hey, calm down. Over
Hey,
there,
you, we're not 2-on-1.
His popularity was waning before it ever hit. I'm a political junkie.
Let me explain to this. Let me ask you this: how many presidents from Bush to Biden to Obama
It's
at the start versus
Okay.
at the re-election process?
Okay.
How many of them had a positive trend in their popularity?
you look at the last few presidents. In the second term, no president is as popular in the. That's why this last election was, even though it was Trump and Harris, it was really Trump and Biden.
Can I say one thing? And I've never done this to a guest, and this is the first time I'm going to do it. I'm actually going to stop this part of the conversation. I want to go back to the thing that we were originally talking about.
Okay.
Because we did
Okay,
derail
we're
a
going
bit.
back to COVID.
Forgive me. I think
No, we rabbit hole all the time. I understand.
the initial thing that I said was that if you were to say that the vaccine mandate was only exclusive to the military, and then you told me about rights, you had the right to vote. Why are your rights being taken away from you? I said that the military.
But you
is
also
different.
have the civil.
But what I'm saying is that my rights were taken from me, not legislatively, through executive actions, which, by the way, is the law of our land. That's fine. But it still goes back to the thing that I said originally when we discussed the elimination of nuance in discussion. I'm telling you, in my heart of hearts, I believe this because I used to be a Democrat, and it was COVID that changed me. When I voted for Trump, it was because I didn't like Hillary, not because I was a Republican. When I voted for Trump in 2020, it's because I didn't like Biden, not because I liked Trump or I was a Republican. And when I voted for Trump even now in 2024, it's not because I dislike Democrats or like I'm a MAGA guy. It's because my guy folded and joined him. That's why I voted for him. And in 2028, if you present to me an adequate Democratic, I truly am independent.
Oh, no, I
truly am.
You're
If
a
you present to
libertarian.
me,
You're a libertarian.
I'm not a libertarian because I think libertarianism devolves into anarchy. I think that you do.
No, I
I
agree-
think
I
government
agree.
does have a place.
You have a very libertarian intent, though.
I believe in people,
Yes.
and I believe in people the most when they love this country.
But, okay, on that, and I'm going to tie this back into education. In education, one of the great failings of education, because most of the decisions about education are made at the local level, the school board level. Now, we are lucky we have a very good board right now in Afton, but you get a lot of boards of uneducated people making decisions about education.
Okay,
It's a problem, wouldn't you say?
I would agree. Yes, I would agree that ignorant people being in charge of any industry is bad for that industry.
I'm getting to the point where I almost think that we'd be better off if we took the ancient Greek philosophy instead of having the elections that are corrupted because basically money can buy elections. Going up to everybody choosing a white or black rock, and whoever gets it is in, and then you don't know if you're ever returning, because the system. I mean,
Can I say
let
what,
me back-
one second,
let-
can I say what you're saying though?
Okay.
You're making the argument of a democratic republic versus a true democracy.
Oh.
When you say white or
well, we're
black,
not a democracy; we're a republic.
that's what I'm saying.
Democratic
but
republic.
ancient Greece was a democracy. The majority ruled.
But they didn't have elections, though.
Fair, also fair. That's what I'm just trying to articulate some nuance.
At the
into
local level, they were pure democracy. You are correct there.
Just forgive me. You sometimes you are an educated man, so sometimes you forget that the average listener might not know what you're saying.
Oh, okay.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay, and I also, for those of you who don't know, I'm extremely ADD. I
No,
forget
you're
what I'm
good.
saying.
You're
I
good.
jump
You're
down
good. You're
rabbit
good.
holes.
I love this
that-
shit, Tim. I love this shit. I just don't want to lose people.
Okay, but
Do you
I also forget what I was saying.
No, you were trying to make the argument of saying like, is this system the current one that's working?
Here's the thing. Everybody complains about the government we have, and this was the thing that you and I were arguing about a long time ago about the things that Kennedy wants to do with cutting things out.
RFK Jr. specifically.
Yeah. And I said, the thing, like it or not, the way the laws are made, you can't just cut things willy-nilly, because here's the thing.
You're talking about specifically Doge with.
Yeah, because of, well, or the parts in.
Well, the power of the purse doesn't reside with the executive; it resides with the legislative.
Right. And that's when they started saying they were going to turn things off. Again, that is not their power to do in the first place.
Well, unless you're empowered by the legislature, then yeah, correct.
Or the legislature does an oversight.
Or they, yeah, fair.
But to get things out of Congress, and it's making sausage. Bills are called camels because they keep piling things on.
Specifically, omnibus, continued resolutions.
When you cut something, you have no idea what you're cutting. And here's the thing. When our nation was born, we were barely a nation of 15 million people. We are 300 million people. People complain about the bureaucracy, but to govern something that big takes a lot of bureaucracy. Is it a lot of sausage? Is there a lot of waste? Yes.
Agreed.
Could it be more streamlined? Yes.
Agreed.
But here's the thing you're looking at in all of those cases. you have laws that are set in place to do this, and you can't do things. You have to operate under the laws. Now, are the laws antiquated in some cases? Very much so. But you change this, then you get where I'm going with
Yeah,
this?
there's the downstream effects of the decisions that you're making.
And I'll go back to my favorite Winston Churchill quote. Our country is screwed up, but I wouldn't take anything else.
Agreed.
And if I have sound pessimistic at all, I want you to say I am very much a patriot. I love this country. I would die for this country. But that's not going to, and this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Patriotism is complaining. It is saying, this is what I think. Now, do I think burning people's private property? No. But I do think you should be able to protest. And I think
You're right.
those riots may not have started had some other things not happened. They could have. You could go either way. I'm saying without dissent, you can't have the society you want.
You wouldn't have had America.
No,
They revolted.
we
textbook definition.
literally were raised a product of dissent.
What was the definition of vaccine?
A preparation that is administered by injection to stimulate the body's immune response against a specific
Sounds pretty good to me.
infection, agent, or disease.
Okay. So then by that logic, should my daughter not be vaccinated? If your kid is vaccinated, is not my daughter more at risk than yours?
Well, by getting everybody vaccinated. Because, well, the main reason the whole MMR, the ones you give your child, it comes up because, and I know this better than anybody, because they say, oh, it claims it's autism. That's the biggest.
For the record, I don't think that vaccines in isolation are the cause of autism. I think that it is many variables, but I do think that vaccines are one of the variables. I think diet, I think a lot of things.
I love you like you're my own kid,
I know.
but you're wrong.
I know.
It's genetics. And I know that
I
because
think that's a variable. I think that's one of the variables.
I will give you, is it something that could exacerbate what's already there? Yes, but it's not causing it.
I don't think there's any direct correlation from one variable. Like, I don't think it's just the fluoride in our water. I don't think it's, I think genetics is probably, if you were to do a pie chart, I'm sure genetics is the majority of it, to be completely frank with you. But I think if there's,
It's pretty much all of it. Okay, here, let me say this. After having two autistic children, my wife was going to get her tubes tied. We were at the OB,
GYN.
yeah, and she's on the table. They do the blood test to see if she's pregnant.
And she is.
She's pregnant. Of course, I get called in, and they're like, "Your wife's distraught. I think she's probably they find cancer or something like that." I'm panic stricken, and she says, "I'm pregnant," and I'm like, "And," which got me a butt whipping, and so when we didn't get vaccinated, just because some people had suggested.
Nick. Are you talking about Nick?
No, Noah, my youngest.
Sorry, youngest. Forgive me.
And so we waited till it showed up. Now, why most people think that those have any effect on it is because the delays don't show up until they are 2 years old. It's at that developmental stage that the things start to, does that make sense?
I agree and disagree. I don't think that's what it is.
Oh, well,
I think it's because there's been no double-blind placebo test on any vaccine.
well, I'm telling you, we did it ourselves. And
Double-blind placebo test?
no, we did not vaccinate our child.
But surely you understand that anecdotal evidence is not superseding a general
Oh,
population.
I understand that.
Okay.
But we were
It's like me saying,
we
I
were
got
we-
my daughter vaccinated.
We were told by our neurologist when and because even though
By the way, I want to make sure that you understand that I am deeply respectful and I'm trying to
oh
navigate
no
this.
I know you're
Okay,
you're
I'm
making,
in as good faith as I can be,
I know.
brother. I just want you to know that.
If I
Forgive
thought
me.
you were wanting to jump on
I
you,
know,
beat
I
the hell
know,
out of you.
I know. I want to reiterate that.
But we didn't. It was almost by the time he was 3 years old, and by then it was very apparent.
Okay.
And then we get him vaccinated. And I will tell you, the one that didn't get the vaccination has the most profound autism out of it. Now, and just from what I've seen, and if you go through and look, we did some questionnaires with the neurologist, went back, looked at family traits. It's this. Basically, you're taking the gene and clicking this one, bam, it happens. And if you go back to most people and if they're honest, now here's the thing, and this is the hard thing about autism, and I'm going to sound like a jerk saying this,
No, say it.
and I deal with this when you deal with in IEPs. People don't want to see their child as flawed.
Yeah.
I don't see my children as flawed. They're my children. I love them. My wife used to get mad at me because I was not angry when I found out our children were. They're my children. I mean,
You're
nothing's
gonna love them
change
all
it.
the same.
Whether they have a label, it doesn't bother me. That's my kid. And she had agrees with me now, but she was really mad at me for. But if your people don't want to admit it's my genetics that made you that way, and so people are looking for anything to blame except for that, and I think that's more what it is. And I've got some pretty good solid evidence of that. It's just you don't want to be the cause of your kid's downfall. Does that make sense?
I
People
I get that
and let me tell you, my youngest son he has come so far, and he's still not very far. I mean, when he was a baby, he was wiping feces on the wall. I mean, beating the crap out of teachers. I was going up to Manier all the time. I mean, hell on wheels. But parents see that, and they don't want to think. People don't want to. I did that to my kid. Does that make sense?
It does, 1,000,000%. I think anybody with a kid will instantly resonate with exactly what you said.
So I mean, you can. I mean, when I hear people, I mean, I usually I'll see stuff online. Like I put an RFK Junior meme on there, the one when he said, "Don't look to me for medical advice," and I'm like, "Well, stop giving it on autism," and then I got all kinds of hell on the, and I'm just like, the anti-vax stuff. I just don't even. I mean, what you're talking about is the right to your personal right.
The same logic I use with abortion is the same logic I use with the jab. It's my body, it's my choice.
I agree, but most people on your side of that argument will use those two.
They're
completely
hypocrites.
different. And
most people on your
you-
side of the argument
Oh no!
are also
Oh
hypocrites.
yeah! Oh
Because they'll be the one pushing for abortion, but then telling me
oh no!
I need to get the jab.
I don't disagree. Well, you can tell with my wife and I. My wife, we both are very pro-choice, but as far as we are concerned,
You're Christians, and I'm the same way, by the way.
and by the way, I'm not super pro-choice anyway. I am. Roe versus Wade would have not been a thing back in the '60s if they would have just allowed in case of rape and incest.
During this election, I voted for Trump, and I voted against the proposition that banned abortion in our state, Missouri. Right. So Missouri in 2024 had two things on the ballot: the presidency, and then also a proposition to ban abortion. They had some stipulation and all that. You can say many things about me. Am I obtuse? Am I a douche? Am I this? All yes. But one of the things you can't say about me is I'm not a hypocrite. The same logic that I used to vote for Trump, I used to vote against that proposition because I want less government involvement in my life, and not just my life, your life. So, Tim, I really enjoyed this.
I do.
I would love to have you back on sometime if you ever would like to be back on.
Yeah.
We've already been here for 3 hours and 20 minutes, for the record.
Sorry, we lost most of you.
No, dude, fuck that. I always say this. Your wife will watch this. My wife will watch this. That's 2 views.
My wife will make fun of me and then hit me for things, but
No, I think you've done a very
you
good
got
job.
spousal abuse.
Did you enjoy this?
Oh, yeah.
I hope it was.
Oh, I you know me, man. I love to talk,
I know, but I
and I like winding you up too.
If there's one thing I'm passionate about, well, let me end with this.
You two are both easy to wind up.
I love this country.
Oh,
Like I said, there's nowhere else I would rather live. I think that you and I would both agree that there is room for improvement. The only place we disagree is where and how. But I venture to say, even in that disagreement, if there was a Venn diagram, we would agree on 80% of it.
oh yeah.
And I think that's the majority of people. And I think we get
Well,
caught up.
and I think the echo chamber deals with the extremes because that sells, clicks, and whatever. I mean, you know about the media
It's
stuff.
never been harder to be a critical thinker, and it's never been easier to be a subject of propaganda.
A drone, yeah.
Yeah, it's never been easier.
And that's what that's what scares me. And we live in a society where, and Nino can tell you this, kids are using AI to do their assignments.
Yeah.
They're not thinking for themselves. And that's why I've gone in my contemporary issues class, which is a class where you just deal with hot topics like we deal with abortion, gun rights, racism in America.
The old Philistine method of just learning how to learn and arguing and
I,
debating.
we don't have written assignments. It's all discussion.
Good. Tim, you want to know why I think we could agree with? I think education's broken. Tim Hill.
Hey, but it's better than anything else. Because you go to places like Germany where kids are, because they're special needs or because they're ADD, they've been tracked somewhere else.
I think when you're the king on the hill, you don't compare yourself to everybody else.
Well, you can't have, look, the great thing about America is we educate everybody. The bad thing about America is we educate everybody.
Yeah.
Now, I wouldn't have a problem if they said, if you choose not to succeed or you choose not to work, opt out.
Yeah.
Or you have to be at least.
I think there's a social contract that is inevitably drawn even past our rights and liberties. I agree with you on that one.
And I think the big problem of education is we're trying to feed people who don't want to be fed.
Agreed. But we're also not. Let's get you on again, Tim. I love you, brother. Seriously,
All right.
seriously.
I had a blast.
I want you to know that.